Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Bianca Roberson. Bianca Roberson, born on October 17, 1998, Bianca grew up to be a remarkable individual. She excelled at Bayard Rustin High School, earning straight A's and graduating with honors. Her impressive academic record earned her a 4-year merit scholarship to Jacksonville University in Florida, where she planned to major in criminal justice and pursue her dream of becoming an FBI forensic agent. Bianca was a multi-talented young woman who had been involved in various activities throughout her life. She was a Girl Scout, a cheerleader, and a basketball player. She also had a passion for music, taking lessons in flute, violin, clarinet, and guitar. Additionally, she was an artist. Bianca lived with her mother and maternal grandmother, Josephine Perry, and was excited to experience the independence and challenges of dorm life. However, her plans were tragically cut short. On June 28, 2017, Bianca, her mother, and grandmother went shopping at Walmart to prepare for her upcoming move to Florida. Bianca Roberson was tragically killed in a car accident on a road she knew well. The incident occurred just 10 minutes after she left a Walmart parking lot. Witnesses quickly called 911 and first responders rushed to the scene. Unfortunately, paramedics were unable to save Bianca, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Initial observations suggested that Bianca's severe head injuries were caused by her car veering off the road. However, as police interviewed eyewitnesses, a crucial detail emerged. A witness reported that Bianca's car had collided with a red pickup truck, which had fled the scene without stopping. As she drove home to meet her granddaughter, Bianca's grandmother was worried about the traffic and wondered if it might be related to Bianca. However, she had no idea that the cause of the traffic jam was actually a car crash involving Bianca. When she arrived home, she was met with devastating news. 2 police officers were waiting to inform her that Bianca had been killed in the accident. For Michelle, Bianca's mother, the news was almost too much to bear. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Michelle, a nurse from Delaware County, was still grieving the loss of her 22-year-old son, M.L. James Rowley, who had passed away from a heart condition in 2013. She had hoped that time would ease her pain, but instead, it had only intensified with the loss of her daughter. Michelle Robertson is struggling to cope with the loss of her second child. "I'm just existing," she said, feeling lost and without purpose. Her children were her reason for getting up in the morning, and now she feels like a mom without kids. After her divorce from Rodney Robertson in 2006, they managed to put aside their differences and work together as amicable co-parents thanks to their daughter Bianca. Michelle acknowledged that their divorce was not easy, but Bianca's presence helped to calm the tension. "Bianca didn't like it when I spoke harshly to her mother, and she would correct me," he said. Bianca's love for her family, especially her father, brought them closer together. Rodney admitted that Bianca was his favorite, and her devotion to family was inspiring. Bianca's father proudly said that his daughter was one step closer to achieving her dream of becoming an FBI forensic specialist. Bianca was excited to be on her own, but her future career was her main focus. Her hard work had paid off, as she had received a 4-year merit scholarship to Jacksonville University, one of the 3 schools that had accepted her out of the 4 she had applied to. Bianca's father said she had also been accepted to Coastal Carolina and the University of Georgia. Investigators were seeking CCTV footage to confirm the initial belief that Bianca's car veered off the road after colliding with a red pickup truck. If this were the case, it would imply that Bianca's death was no accident, but rather a deliberate act that required the police to identify a perpetrator. However, the truth revealed during the investigation proved even more stunning. While awaiting the CCTV footage, a significant development in the case occurred. It was initially assumed that Bianca's death resulted from her car crashing and hitting her head. Yet, during the autopsy, forensic experts made a startling discovery: there was a bullet in Bianca's head. This revelation drastically altered the course of the investigation. What initially seemed like an accident and later a collision with a red pickup truck was revealed to be a death caused by a gunshot wound to the head. The autopsy report's findings prompted detectives to meet with Bianca's family, bringing devastating news that her death was no accident. This revelation sent shockwaves, especially for her mother, Michelle, who couldn't fathom why anyone would harm her daughter. Bianca had a close-knit relationship with those around her, and her family couldn't identify anyone who might have wished her harm. Desperate for answers, the Robertson family relied on investigators to identify the person responsible for Bianca's tragic death. Upon reviewing the security footage from the Walmart her family visited on the day of her death, detectives found no suspicious activity. The detectives closely examined the family's actions from the moment they left their cars to the time they departed the parking lot. They dismissed the possibility that someone from Walmart could have followed Bianca and shot her, as she had not argued with anyone during their visit. The family had simply shopped, loaded their purchases into Bianca's car, and left. The investigation suggested that the motive for Bianca's death might be linked to an incident that occurred while she was driving home on the highway. Bianca's mother recalled, "We packed all the bags into Bianca's car," referring to the 2009 Chevy Malibu they had purchased for her 16th birthday from CarMax. Michelle recalled that her mother had chosen the car Bianca was driving when she first got her permit. According to Michelle, Bianca's mother said that Bianca had gotten everything she wanted, but Michelle didn't think of her as spoiled. Instead, she believed Bianca was simply loved and also willing to work for the things she desired. In fact, Bianca started her first job at McDonald's when she was 15 and soon switched to a dietary aid position at the Whitehorse Village Retirement Community in Delaware County. Michelle remembered that she had received a large number of letters and cards from the residents at Whitehorse Village who adored Bianca. After the police obtained traffic footage from CCTV cameras, Michelle pointed out that there were no cameras at the exact location where Bianca veered off the road. However, there was a camera about a mile away. To help illustrate the location, Michelle suggested looking at Google Maps. According to the map, Bianca lost control of her car where two lanes merged into one. When investigators reviewed the recording, they found evidence that supported the account of Bianca's encounter with the driver of the red pickup truck. The footage showed the cars traveling side by side, approaching a point where their lanes merged into one. It's possible that the conflict began when one driver failed to yield to the other. Given the tragic outcome, investigators inferred that the driver of the red pickup truck might have been the one who fired the shot. However, the poor quality of the footage made it impossible to read the pickup truck's license plates or see the driver's face. Nevertheless, from that point on, the driver of the pickup truck became the primary suspect in Bianca Roberson's death. Detectives were tasked with identifying the man, but they only had a blurry image to work with. After inquiring with Bianca's family members, it became clear that none of them knew anyone who owned a red pickup truck. The police then re-interviewed the witnesses who were present at the scene and those who had called 911, but unfortunately, none of them had caught a glimpse of the vehicle's license plate. The Bianca Roberson family has received an outpouring of support from friends, strangers, and people of all ages since Bianca's passing. A vigil was held just 2 days after her death, and many have reached out to share their stories and condolences. Bianca's family describes her as a selfless and compassionate person who always put the needs of others before her own. According to her mother, Michelle, Bianca would often take in children who were in need, even if it meant sneaking them into their home without permission. When confronted about her actions, Bianca would simply say that she wanted to help others in the same way she would want someone to help her if she were in a similar situation. This kind of empathy and kindness was evident in many aspects of Bianca's life, including the time she witnessed a car accident and immediately asked her mother if they could stop to help. A kind-hearted woman's first instinct was to invite those eating alone to join her family for dinner. In the aftermath of Bianca's car accident, investigators analyzed footage from distant cameras to determine the direction of the red pickup truck involved in the incident. To gather more details about the truck, including its brand, model, and license plate, they required higher quality footage. The police sought the public's assistance through the media, asking anyone with information about the truck to come forward. Following the accident, the pickup truck turned towards Poi Pike. To find evidence, detectives visited nearby houses and shops, searching for cameras that might have captured the truck. After an extensive search, they found a camera with good quality footage, taken around 5 minutes after witnesses called 911 to report Bianca's car accident. Upon analyzing this footage, detectives saw the red pickup truck driving by shortly after the incident. The investigation continued, but the license plate of the suspect's car remained unknown, and it was unclear if the car in the footage was the same one or just a similar vehicle. However, 2 days after the incident, a new lead emerged when a woman contacted the police, claiming to have seen the car they were searching for. She also reported seeing the driver's face. She described the car as a red pickup truck that overtook her, stopped at the Poi Pike intersection, and then turned left. This information was crucial in narrowing down the search area and also revealed that the pickup truck in the footage was not the actual suspect's vehicle, but rather a similar-looking truck. Her description helped a forensic artist create a sketch of the suspect, who was identified as a white male, 25 to 35 years old, with brown hair and a stubble beard. The police released the suspect's sketch, hoping someone would recognize the person and come forward. They showed the sketch to Bianca's family, but no one recognized the individual. As the investigation continued, detectives began to consider the possibility that Bianca's death was a hate crime. To gather more evidence, the police canvassed the area where the red pickup truck was last seen, visiting homes and businesses near the intersection where it turned left. They were searching for a high-quality surveillance recording that could provide answers to their questions. Their efforts paid off when a homeowner, who lived less than half a mile from the intersection, provided the police with a recording from their driveway surveillance camera. By estimating the time it would take to drive from the crime scene to the homeowner's location, the police quickly found the relevant footage. Although the new footage was of better quality than the previous one, its angle made it impossible for the police to identify the car or its driver. The police worked hard to find another recording from a closer camera, and they got lucky. Although the license plate was not visible, they were able to identify some unique features of the car. These features included a sticker on the right side window, a vertical dent on the passenger door, and damage to the hood. With these details, the police had a much better chance of finding the car. The police sought the public's help in finding the truck and its driver by offering a $5,000 reward for any information that could aid in the investigation. They were confident that someone would recognize the distinctive vehicle. 3 days after Bianca Roberson's death, a lawyer contacted the police station on behalf of a client who wanted to turn himself in, stating that his client was connected to the incident that resulted in Bianca's death. The incident occurred on a recent Wednesday at approximately 5:30 p.m. Bianca Roberson, an 18-year-old who had just graduated from Westchester Ruston High School, was driving on Route 100, a 2-lane highway, on her way to Jacksonville University. Her life was full of promise, with a loving family and a bright future ahead. As she approached the merge with Route 202, the road narrowed from 2 lanes to 1. A common merge on a southeastern Pennsylvania highway turned deadly last Wednesday when a dispute over positioning escalated into violence. Bianca Roberson was merging from 2 lanes to 1 when a man in a red pickup truck, also merging, became agitated and shot her in the head. The suspect, 28-year-old David Desper of Pennsylvania, surrendered to police with his lawyer. Although he refused to testify, he consented to a search of his home and revealed the location of his pickup truck. David was subsequently arrested and charged with Bianca Roberson's murder. The police tracked down the suspect's vehicle, a pickup truck, at a location David had previously mentioned. Unique features on the truck, such as stickers on the windows and damage to the body, made it unmistakably clear that it was the same truck involved in the crime. The investigators searched David's residence and found the firearm that was used to shoot and kill Bianca Roberson. Despite this major breakthrough in the case, the authorities remained baffled as to the killer's motivation. Over 800 loved ones and members of the community attended a heart-wrenching farewell ceremony at the St. Paul's Baptist Church in the suburban Westchester borough, which lies approximately 25 miles. During the funeral service, many people paid tribute to she, including her brothers, officials from her high school, the chief admissions officer from the university she was set to attend, and friends. In his eulogy, Pastor Wayne Croft Sr. drew a comparison between the shooter and two other infamous cases: George Zimmerman, who shot and killed Trayvon Martin, a black teenager, in Florida in 2012, and was acquitted of murder in 2013, and Michael Dunn, who shot and killed Jordan Davis, another black teenager, in Florida in 2012, after a dispute over music. Dunn was convicted and sentenced to life in prison plus 90 years. The pastor expressed the sentiment of the black community, stating that regardless of whether Bianca's murder was a result of road rage or racism, the fact remains that a brilliant young black woman's life was lost. During the trial in September 2018, David Desper was asked to explain his motive for committing the crime. Instead of providing an answer, he requested forgiveness from Bianca's family. For Bianca's parents, the thought of facing their daughter's alleged killer was daunting. To show their support and unity, Rodney had arranged for family members and friends to wear T-shirts with Bianca's face on the front as they gathered at the Chester County Government Services Center. The family of Bianca Roberson wore bracelets with a poignant message: "Bianca Roberson, a rose in God's garden." They also held a banner that read, "Justice for Bianca Nicole Roberson," a reminder of the tragic event that took her life on June 28, 2017. Rodney, Bianca's father, expressed his uncertainty about how he would react when he saw the man responsible for his daughter's murder. "I don't know what I'll do when I see him," he said. "The man who held the gun that took my daughter's life, he just took her dreams away. He had no right to do that." Michelle, Bianca's mother, struggled to come to terms with the loss of her child. "I want to hold her, comfort her, and bring her back," she said through tears. The prosecutor argued that the traffic conflict occurred because Bianca failed to yield when their lanes merged into one. In response, David Desper rolled down the passenger side window and fired a shot. Realizing the severity of his actions, David Desper fled the scene, leaving his pickup truck with a friend in Pennsylvania, and attempted to escape to Delaware. However, after his sketch and the distinctive features of his pickup truck were publicized in the news, David Desper decided to hire a lawyer and surrender. The police investigated his social media accounts and interviewed his friends but found no evidence to suggest that the crime was motivated by bias. As a result, David Desper was not charged with a hate crime. District Attorney Hogan stated that there was no indication that the crime was racially motivated or a hate crime. However, many people disagreed with this assessment. Before the sentencing, the defense portrayed David Desper as harmless and immature for his age, describing him as a big kid who enjoyed playing with cars in his free time. They argued that David Desper had essentially handed the case to the government by turning himself in. The defense claimed that David Desper was driving home when another car startled him, causing him to fire the gun. They maintained that David Desper was not a menacing individual. Prosecutor Chris Miller countered that a 28-year-old man driving with a loaded firearm is not a big kid. He emphasized that David Desper's actions were those of a responsible adult. Ironically, David Desper's own mother had shared a Facebook post about the police searching for the person who murdered Bianca Roberson, unaware that the suspect was her own son. Wendy Desperate expressed her love for Bianca's family and apologized for her son's actions. "I'm so sorry for what my son did," she said, as her son wept. Rodney Robertson struggled to speak through tears as he addressed his daughter's killer. "I have simple questions for the defendant," he said. "Why did you shoot my daughter? Was it because of her youth, her race, her gender, or just because you wanted to go first on the road? Was it simply because you were having a bad day?" Rodney continued, "All my dreams for Bianca were coming true until the day the defendant took her life. Now, all I have left of Bianca are my memories." David Desper pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. The court sentenced him to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Judge Anne-Marie Wheatcraft became emotional as she announced the sentence, telling Desper, "I don't believe you were afraid, I believe it was anger." County Judge Anne-Marie Wheatcraft imposed the maximum sentence of 20 to 40 years for that grade of homicide. David Desper attempted to appeal the sentence, but his appeal was denied. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in 1963 in Weatherford, Texas. Karen Kaler White, his future wife, was born in the same city 2 years later, in 1965. They met while attending a Texas university in the early 1980s. At the time, Craig was a graduating engineering student, and Karen was a freshman studying humanities. They quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. Young and in love, they appeared to be the ideal couple, with Craig standing out as a top student due to his exceptional determination and engineering talent. After graduating in the late 1980s, they had a modest wedding with only close friends and family in attendance. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, and their second child, Lauren, in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle by local standards. In 1999, while Karen was pregnant with their third child, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a large utility company in Weatherford. His promotion coincided with the birth of their son, Sean, whom he cherished. Craig purchased a large house in a highly respected neighborhood in the city, along with a dependable car for his family. He became the main provider for the family, while Karen stayed at home. On the surface, the family appeared to be flawless. Their daughters, Emily and Lauren, were gifted in sports and music, frequently taking part in singing competitions and local activities. Emily was an outstanding student who went on to attend the prestigious pharmacy college, whereas Lauren, also an excellent student, aspired to enroll in a conservatory to pursue a music career. Their son, Sean, was a friendly, curious boy with a passion for mathematics and a dream of becoming an archaeologist. He had a close relationship with his parents and sisters. Craig supported the family financially, while Karen ensured the home was welcoming, took care of the children, and enjoyed baking. They was actively involved in community work, aiming to enhance their neighborhood, and had raised 3 gifted and wonderful children. However, despite their seemingly perfect life, the family was hiding numerous issues. In 2007, Karen confided in her younger sister, Linda, revealing that she was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Karen expressed her distress over Craig's controlling behavior, which had been ongoing for years and was escalating. Craig insisted on a detailed record of every single expense, no matter how small, including daily household costs. Karen had to provide him with receipts from the supermarket, bank statements, and even report her daily activities while he was at work. The entire family was bound to a strict schedule set by Craig, dictating when they had to be home, sleep, wake up, eat, and even when they could be intimate. As time passed, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became increasingly demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move down to the hour. Karen felt trapped, with no personal time, only duties and responsibilities. She tried to meet all of Craig's demands, hoping he would eventually ease up and they could return to their previous life. However, Craig seemed to take pleasure in his control and showed no willingness to change. Linda was deeply disturbed by what her sister shared, having, like everyone else, perceived Craig as the ideal husband and family man, only to discover he was a tyrant at home. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family and was financially dependent on Craig, along with their children. So, she decided to look for a job that could provide a stable income. Karen, a mother of 3, had maintained a remarkable physical shape despite her advanced age. She prioritized good nutrition, occasional dieting, self-care, and daily jogging. Unbeknownst to her husband Craig, Karen joined a local fitness club, where she spent several hours each day working out. This newfound hobby allowed her to relieve stress, find distraction, and clarify her thoughts. As Craig was at work, he remained unaware of her fitness routine. The fitness club management soon took notice of Karen, an attractive, fit, and dedicated individual. They offered her a trial opportunity to become a fitness instructor with the potential for a formal employment contract. Karen, a former stay-at-home wife, was thrilled by this unexpected chance to turn her passion into a paid career. When Craig eventually discovered Karen's secret, she anticipated a negative reaction, guessing him to prohibit her from continuing. However, he responded calmly and seemed pleased that his wife had found a fulfilling activity that also earned her an income. Karen's husband had 3 conditions for their new arrangement. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and maintain their intimate life. Karen agreed, as this gave her the freedom to manage her daily life and finances without needing to justify every expense to her husband. At the fitness club where she worked, Karen met Sunny Reese, a new instructor. They quickly became friends, and for Karen, who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, Sunny became a trusted confidant. As their friendship grew, Karen and Sunny spent more time together, going for walks, drinking coffee, and having in-depth conversations. Their friendship eventually evolved into something more, but they kept their relationship a secret. Karen knew she had to confess to her husband but struggled to find the right words and worried about the consequences. After months of preparation, she finally opened up to Craig. Although Craig was initially perplexed by his wife's confession, he remained calm and composed. The next day, he revealed that he was open to his wife's relationship with Sunny, but only if he could be a part of it. This proposal left Karen stunned and unsure of how to respond. Craig, however, took the lead and started wooing Sunny, showering her with flowers and small gifts. To him, this seemed like a chance to spice up his intimate life and bring passion back into his marriage to Karen. Initially, the 2 women agreed to Craig's proposal, but it didn't take long for them to realize that he was trying to assert his dominance. Their unusual love triangle was short-lived, and Craig was eventually told that he was no longer welcome in their relationship. Feeling offended, Craig ordered Karen to end the affair immediately, but she continued to see Sunny, having genuinely fallen in love. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, it appeared that Karen was willing to leave her husband for a new relationship. Craig relocated his family to Columbia, Missouri. He became the water director, hoping the move would end his wife's affair with Sunny and restore normal family life. The 2008 move proved challenging. The children adapted to new schools and made friends, while Craig thought he'd severed ties between Karen and Sunny. However, Karen and Sunny continued to secretly communicate through phone calls, texts, and meetings. Karen and Sunny would meet halfway at a roadside hotel, spending a couple of hours together before returning home. By this time, Karen was aware her marriage was failing. She no longer loved her husband, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These secret meetings continued until December 2008. On New Year's Eve, the Kaler family visited their hometown to see family and friends. Sunny was also at the party. Initially, Karen and Sonny kept a low profile, just exchanging greetings. However, as the party went on and they drank more, they became less concerned about what others thought. They were inseparable, holding hands, exchanging romantic glances, and were even seen kissing by some guests. Craig was furious, feeling insulted and humiliated by Karen's public display of her affair in front of dozens of friends, former roommates, and co-workers. He verbally attacked Karen and Sonny at the party, then forcibly dragged Karen away. On the way home, Craig lost control, grabbing Karen by the shoulders and shaking her violently, ripping her dress. He then slapped her, causing her to stumble and fall, hitting her head hard. Harassment continued after they returned home, and the conflict didn't subside. Karen told Craig a few days later that she was leaving him and started divorce proceedings, asking for custody of the children. Initially, Craig apologized and begged her to stay for the children's sake, suggesting they give their marriage another try. However, Karen was resolute and got a divorce. Craig then called their mutual friends and relatives, asking them to persuade Karen to stay with him and not break up the family. She informed him that she was ending their marriage to be with Sonny, admitting that she had never found true happiness with him. In early spring 2009, Craig and Karen got into another argument while still living together. This time, Craig became physically violent, prompting Karen to report him to the police, resulting in his arrest. However, Craig downplayed the incident at the police station, claiming he only restrained Karen to calm her down, which caused her bruises. Following this incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for their divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated and angry, especially when he found out his daughters, Emily and Lauren, sided with their mother, saying they had finally seen her happy after a long time. Craig felt betrayed and refused to communicate with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Meanwhile, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His jealousy led him to try to control her, following her everywhere, watching her house, and even attempting to install a hidden camera. His obsessive behavior negatively impacted his job performance, resulting in him eventually missing work without a valid reason, which ultimately led to him being fired. After losing his job and income, Craig was forced to move in with his parents. With plenty of free time, he began stalking his ex-wife, Karen. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit her 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in the small town of Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame Police Department received a call about a suspicious van and gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported seeing a small truck pull up to her house, and a man got out and entered the house. They heard screams and gunshots, but didn't intervene, fearing the man was armed. The man quickly left the house and drove away. When police arrived, they found a terrified 10-year-old boy, Sean Kaler, calling for help. He couldn't explain what happened, but police soon discovered a horrific scene. Inside the house, near the front door, they found Dorothy lying in a pool of blood, surprisingly alive despite 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered 44-year-old Karen's body. She had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot in the head at close range by her ex-husband, leaving her no chance of survival. Nearby, between a wall and a couch, lay the body of Karen's 18-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was found and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Upstairs, in a second-floor bedroom, Emily's younger sister Lauren was found in a pool of blood, still alive. Lauren fatally begged for her life, repeatedly stating that her father was responsible for the attack. Lauren and her great-grandmother were immediately rushed to the intensive care unit of a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts, neither survived. Lauren died on December 1st due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage, while her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. The only person who survived, Sean, was in shock. Psychologists helped him deal with the trauma he experienced, and since he was the only one who saw what happened at his great-grandmother's house, he needed to be questioned carefully. That evening, Sean's mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he approached her to ask for his favorite pies. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father, Craig, entered with a shotgun. Without a word, Craig pointed the gun at his ex-wife and shot her, then fired again at closer range. Sean was initially frozen in horror, but when his father turned to him and stared silently, he realized he had to escape. He jumped out the open back door and ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and get help. However, upon reaching the threshold, Sean heard more gunshots and, fearing for his safety, hid in a nearby outbuilding. He heard additional shots and waited in terror. Craig was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police received reports of a speeding truck, which helped them quickly determine the direction Craig was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement caught up with Craig the next morning and arrested him without resistance. In the vehicle, they found a rifle, ammunition, and medication for depression and anxiety next to the driver's seat. Craig appeared confused and frightened, admitting to being armed but stating he had no intention of using the weapons. At the police station, Craig initially confessed to his crimes and openly shared his story with the investigating officer. He explained how his wife's infidelity with Sonny and their public humiliation of him had led to his downward spiral. He shared how his efforts to save his marriage resulted in job loss and further erosion of his self-respect. Overcome with emotion, Craig expressed regret and a sense of betrayal by those closest to him, including his daughters. Craig's trial started in December 2010. His lawyer, Thomas Heaney, advised him to recant his initial confession and blame his actions on mental illness and insanity. This was Craig's only way to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig's mental state was severely impacted after his wife left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back into his parents' home. According to Heaney, these factors led to Craig's breakdown, causing him to commit the crime while insane and unaware of his actions. However, prior to 1995, a law in Kansas allowed for leniency if a defendant pleaded insanity, but this law was repealed. The prosecution found no evidence of insanity in Craig's actions, only deliberate planning. Craig bought guns and ammunition beforehand, went to the house where his family was, shot each victim twice to ensure no chance of survival, but intentionally let his son Sean escape. In August 2011, Craig was convicted of all charges and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating he didn't want his father to die because he was his only remaining close relative. Despite numerous appeals, the verdict remained unchanged. Today, Mr. Kaler is still imprisoned, fighting to have his case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. Following the death of his mother and sisters, Sean is now an adult, having completed his education, and has chosen to stay and work in his home state. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Georgine Kruger. Georgine Kruger was born on April 11, 1992, in Munich, as the middle child in a family of 3. Her older brother, Tommy, was 8 years older, and her younger sister, Michelle, was 2.5 years younger. In June 2006, Georgine and her family, including her mother and sisters, relocated to Berlin. Her mother had secured a well-paying job, and they settled into a home on Stendal Street in the Mobit district. Georgine and her sister started attending one of the top local schools on September 1st, which was accessible by bus despite being in a different district. Their mother was satisfied with her new job and had ambitious plans for the future. However, their peaceful life was soon disrupted. From a young age, Georgine had aspirations of becoming an actress. Inspired by Indian films, she dedicated herself to singing and dancing. She actively pursued her passion by participating in school theater productions and taking acting and stage speech courses. Her teachers recognized her talent and predicted a successful and famous future for her. On Friday, September 22, 2006, Georgine's luck changed for the better. She successfully auditioned for a guest role in the TV series Turkish for Beginners and was expecting a call back on Monday, September 25, to finalize the details and sign a contract. As the new girl in school, she had already caught everyone's attention. However, on Monday, September 25, Georgine followed her usual routine and went to school. She was supposed to be back home by 2 p.m., and since she was expecting the call later that afternoon, she asked her grandmother to answer the phone. Georgine's classmates noticed that she seemed distracted and kept checking the time throughout the day. After school, Georgine quickly gathered her belongings and caught her usual bus, number 27, to head home. She got off at the bus stop, which was close to her house, but never made it home. Georgine vanished somewhere between the bus stop and her apartment and was never seen again. Her grandmother, who was expecting her granddaughters to return from school, had prepared lunch and set the table. Georgine was supposed to arrive first, followed by Michelle, who had a later dismissal due to her music classes. However, Georgine failed to appear, which was unusual because she had been looking forward to returning home and had no plans to stay out. When Michelle arrived home at 3 o'clock, her grandmother became worried because Georgine was nowhere to be found. The grandmother tried calling Georgine's phone, but it was turned off. She tried calling again and again, but there was no answer. The worry turned into fear, and when Vina came home from work and learned that her daughter was missing, she knew something was seriously wrong. The police started searching for Georgine, going from house to house, talking to everyone, and checking every possible place. They even used dogs to try to find her scent, but there was no sign of her. By the next morning, pictures of Georgine were posted all over the city, asking for anyone with information to come forward. Many people called the police, saying they had seen a girl who looked like Georgine, but none of the leads were real. At the same time, the police were checking on people who had committed crimes before, especially those who had been involved with minors. However, all their efforts did not produce any results. It was as if Georgine had disappeared into thin air, leaving behind no signs or belongings, making it seem like she never existed. After months of unsuccessful searching, the investigation into Georgine's disappearance was put on hold due to a lack of leads or clues. However, a year later, an anonymous caller claimed that her body was at the bottom of a nearby lake. Despite being unable to identify the caller, the police decided to investigate this new information. A team of skilled divers thoroughly searched the lake bed using advanced equipment but found no sign of Georgine. Although the lead proved to be false, it renewed public interest in the case. The media revisited the story, prompting the police to conduct another search operation. Investigators were certain that Georgine had passed away, but her family, the Georgines, couldn't accept this. To cope, her mother created a story that her daughter had run away to India and was now a Bollywood star, fulfilling her dreams of singing and dancing. This thought gave her comfort and strength to carry on for her younger daughter's sake. Years after her disappearance, in 2016, the search efforts started again. A resident of Stendhal Street contacted the police, concerned about a neighbor who was often inviting underage girls to his home. This neighbor was identified as 35-year-old Ali K., a Turkish immigrant. On the surface, Ali K. appeared to be a devoted family man, married with 3 children. However, a closer look revealed the disturbing truth. The police were shocked to discover that Ollie K. had been investigated 4 years earlier for luring a local schoolgirl with promises of selling her a trendy smartphone at a low price. He took the teenager to the storage room in the basement of his apartment building where he physically assaulted her by hitting her on the head and then forced her into an intimate. Following the assault, he attempted to silence her by making her promise not to reveal the incident to anyone. He handed her a paper napkin to wipe away her tears and helped her clean up before releasing her. Although she agreed to remain silent in order to escape, she immediately informed her parents about the incident once she was free. Together, they reported the violent actions to the police. The schoolgirl described the storage room in the basement, saying it looked like a space created by someone with a disturbed mind. Ollie K. was arrested the same day but strongly denied his guilt. He shared his own version of the events, claiming he was selling a gadget and that the teenager had expressed interest in buying it, which is why she was in his basement storage room. They went downstairs together. When the guest saw the device, she expressed her long-held desire to own one. However, due to financial constraints, she offered to compensate in an alternative manner. According to Ollie, she initiated intimate contact by kissing him and beginning to undress. He attempted to reason with her and pushed her away, resulting in her falling and hitting her head. This account explained the injuries and bruises on her body. Nevertheless, there was no evidence of intimate contact, as Ollie had used protection and later disposed of it. Ollie's wife, Melik, supported her husband's account and accused the guest of behaving inappropriately and attempting to seduce him. Consequently, Ollie received a suspended sentence for causing moderate bodily harm. As the police reopened the investigation into Georgine's disappearance, they decided to re-examine Ollie thoroughly. Ollie K. did not have a stable job and relied on odd jobs and benefits to get by. He had a fondness for gambling, which often led to debt. He frequently visited the Turkish coffee shop on the ground floor of his building, where he socialized with various people who would buy him food and drinks. Ollie K. took great care to maintain a youthful appearance, often spending excessively on fashionable clothes, including using his children's benefits. However, his most disturbing trait was his attraction to young girls. He would frequently try to meet and interact with them, asking inappropriate questions and offering illicit favors, such as buying them alcohol or cigarettes. Despite his suspicious behavior, the police couldn't link him to the disappearance of Georgine. The case had gone cold, but with the emergence of new evidence, it was reopened, and Ollie K. became a prime suspect. When questioned, he denied any involvement in Georgine's disappearance. A search of Georgine's storage room in the basement revealed no signs of Georgine. However, detectives noted that the space seemed more suited for meetings than storage. It was discovered that Ollie K. had been previously questioned and his basement inspected, but the storage room had been overlooked. At the time, there was no reason to suspect him, and the door was always locked, making it inaccessible to anyone but the Ollie K. Ollie had been actively involved in the search operation and was one of the most dedicated members. Although the police didn't have any concrete evidence to charge Ollie, they decided to keep him under surveillance to gather more information. They organized unofficial monitoring and intercepted all his phone calls, which soon yielded initial results. Detectives discovered that K had significant debts, unknown to his wife, totaling around 10,000 euros, which he had accumulated through poker losses. The investigation shifted its focus to this aspect, and undercover agents were introduced to K's close circle. Their goal was to gain his trust, extract necessary information, and obtain a recorded confession. However, they had to proceed slowly and carefully to avoid arousing K's suspicion. To achieve this, a special agent codenamed Hakan was prepared and sent in. He posed as a successful businessman who had recently moved to the Mobit area to open a car service station. Hakan visited the cafe in Ali's building a few times, where he loudly discussed business plans with a partner. As they left, the partner mentioned that they needed to find a manager soon, emphasizing that it was a well-paying position and they needed to choose the right person. After the second man departed, Hakan remained to finish his coffee. It was then that Ali K appeared and took a seat at Hakan's table. Hakan seized the opportunity to offer himself for the manager position, initiating a conversation with Ali K. The discussion quickly transitioned into a casual chat, during which the businessman observed that Ali K seemed well-suited for the role. As the conversation progressed, Hakan mentioned the salary associated with the position. Upon hearing the figure, Ali's eyes lit up as he began envisioning the possibilities, paying off his debts and acquiring the sports car he had long desired. The men started talking regularly after exchanging phone numbers, and their conversations quickly turned into a friendship. Hakan even took Ali on business trips to other cities to build trust and get closer to him. However, this friendship had an unexpected outcome. The suspect tried to present himself in the best possible attribute to his employer, bragging about even his smallest accomplishments and keeping quiet about any wrongdoing. Months later, with the case stalled, the investigation introduced a new agent, Susan, who posed as Hakan's girlfriend. Her goal was to befriend Ali's wife, Melik, and uncover any secrets he might be hiding. It didn't take long for Susan and Melik to get acquainted, and soon all four were socializing together as families. Melik was a sociable person, but she had a very positive view of her husband. For years, she had ignored his infidelities, dismissed accusations of violence from a schoolgirl, and genuinely believed her husband was a good person who was just unlucky in his career. However, things were about to take a turn. Susan realized that Melik wasn't just covering up for Ali. Melik truly believed he was incapable of harming anyone. The agents devised a plan to trick the suspect, Ali K, by spreading a false rumor about a breakthrough in the Georgine case. They left a newspaper with the article in Ali's car, which they had previously installed with cameras and recording devices. When Ali's wife, Melik, found the newspaper, she briefly showed surprise that the case was still being investigated but quickly lost interest. It became clear that Melik was unaware of her husband's involvement in the crime. Despite the agents' efforts, their 6-month-long investigation yielded no confessions. Ali K presented himself as honest and trustworthy, while Melik remained oblivious to her husband's wrongdoing. The agents had gained the trust of the Ali family to the point of being asked to look after their children, but their cover was becoming increasingly expensive to maintain. The agents had to lease a space for a fake auto repair shop and create a sham employment contract to avoid raising Ali's suspicions. In a last-ditch effort, they introduced a new agent, Kaur, who would play the role of a villain. According to the backstory, Kaur was Hakan's cousin with a criminal record, involved in illicit businesses. It was hoped that Ali would form a bond with someone who shared similar interests and confide in them about his wrongdoings. Ali quickly befriended Kaur, and they spent time together, going to various nightclubs and indulging in reckless behavior. Kaur openly admitted that he earned his money through shady means and wanted to spend it lavishly, with Ali eager to join in. At the same time, Kaur frequently complained about his girlfriend, claiming he couldn't break up with her because she was blackmailing him and threatening to expose his illicit business activities to the authorities. According to Kaur, his girlfriend constantly demanded money, and her expectations were becoming increasingly excessive. One day, while drinking with Ali, Kaur announced that he wanted to get rid of his girlfriend, who was blackmailing him, and was willing to pay 100,000 euros to anyone who would take care of the problem. Ali's interest was piqued, and he offered to handle the task himself. Kaur agreed, but suggested they discuss the details in a private setting when they were sober. In November 2017, the two men sat in a car and discussed their plan to eliminate Kaur's troublesome girlfriend. At one point, Kaur expressed doubts about Ali's ability to murder a life. In response, Ali revealed a shocking secret that he claimed no one else knew. Ali K confessed to taking the life of a young girl over 11 years ago. In 2006, a girl had moved onto his street, and he became infatuated with her. He would often greet her on her way to and from school, complimenting her despite her young age. He described her as attractive and admitted to having strong desires for her. On a warm September day, Ali K saw an opportunity to act on his desires. He asked a neighbor girl to help him move items from his storage area, and she agreed, unaware of the danger. Once they were in the basement, he locked the door and attempted to kiss the girl, who resisted and screamed. He then struck her on the head, knocking her unconscious, and took advantage of her. Fearing she might report him to the police, Ali K decided to silence her permanently. He grabbed her throat and squeezed as hard as he could, feeling her pulse fade away. He described the process in detail, including the sound of her neck cracking. The girl's body remained in the basement for several days, and Ali K knew that if anyone had searched the area, they would have found him. However, no one suspected anything, and once the initial commotion died down, he wrapped the body in an old rug and disposed of it in a garbage bin that was taken to a landfill. Ali's confessions were recorded by a camera in Kaur's car, and he was arrested that same evening. Unfortunately, her remains were never found because the landfill where her body was taken regularly burned its waste. The trial took 2.5 years to conclude. Ali K maintained his innocence, claiming he fabricated the story to gain Kaur's trust. He said his plan was to rescue Kaur's girlfriend by turning in her to the police once he received the money. Although no other evidence was found, Ali K's detailed confession was enough to convince the jury of his guilt. In March 2020, nearly 14 years after Georgine's disappearance, Ali K was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His wife, Melik, never believed he was guilty, convinced that he had implicated himself for a noble cause. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Alejandra Lafuente. Alejandra Lafuente was a stunning brunette with captivating hair and bright brown eyes that accentuated her thick, dark eyelashes. She maintained her athletic physique through a dedicated fitness routine, which included yoga and breathing exercises. Taking care of herself was a top priority for Alejandra, and she frequently visited beauty salons, massage parlors, and spas to pamper herself. During warm weather, she could often be found lounging on the beach while still managing to get some scientific work done. On cloudy days, she would opt for tanning salons instead. It's clear that Alejandra had a deep affection for herself and believed she embodied the ideal of female attractiveness. Her career was also thriving, thanks in part to her father's influence. Alberto Dente, a renowned psychiatrist and doctor of sciences, was a leading expert in his field, with a focus on mental health conditions such as schizophrenia and manic disorders. His groundbreaking scientific work and experiments had earned him widespread recognition. Alejandra greatly admired her father and aspired to achieve similar success. She followed in his footsteps by enrolling in a prestigious university to study psychiatry, where she graduated with honors. Her strong work ethic, exceptional intelligence, and her father's influential connections enabled her to complete and defend her thesis on manic syndrome with distinction. However, Alejandra's career took an unexpected turn when she became more interested in working as a psychotherapist rather than pursuing a traditional path in psychiatry. With the financial support of her father, Alejandra obtained the necessary licensing and opened her own practice in a modern business center located in the heart of the capital. Her practice quickly gained popularity, attracting a diverse range of female clients who sought counseling for issues such as eating disorders, depression, relationship problems, and low self-esteem. Alejandra demonstrated a remarkable ability to help her clients resolve complex family issues. Despite her professional success, her personal life faced challenges. Her first marriage ultimately ended in divorce, but it was blessed with two beautiful daughters who inherited Alejandra's captivating eyes and her father's sharp sense of humor. Alejandra wasn't discouraged despite having two children. She still wanted to meet someone who could be a good partner and father to her daughters. After her separation, her ex-husband would visit on weekends to spend time with she and help with household chores. However, his last visit would be his final one. Alejandra asked him to enter through the backyard, claiming the front door lock was jammed. She then directed him to the bathroom, saying their youngest daughter was bathing. Unaware of the danger, he complied. The house was eerily silent, with no cartoons or children's laughter. Upon entering the bathroom, he noticed tape on the floor and an empty bathtub. At that moment, he realized something was wrong. Alejandra stood behind him, wielding a hammer. She delivered 2 forceful blows to his head, causing him to collapse with blood pouring from his skull. The experts later determined that the first blow was fatal, and he had no chance of saving himself. The eldest daughter returned home early from a friend's house and became an unintentional witness to a horrific scene. The children had often seen their parents arguing, and Alejandra, who was believed to have mental health issues, would frequently lash out at her friends and even physically attack her husband. Her friends and housemates had observed her outbursts and erratic behavior on multiple occasions. On this particular day, the situation escalated out of control. The daughter fled the house and called for help, prompting a neighbor to rush over and contact the police. Alejandra, a psychologist, was arrested and charged with murder. She spent a month in a cell awaiting her initial court hearing. During the trial, Alejandra maintained her innocence. Her lawyers argued that she had acted in self-defense, claiming that her ex-husband was excessively jealous and had fabricated stories about her bringing men into the house, which could harm the mental well-being of their daughters. According to their version of events, on the day of the crime, the ex-husband had shown up unexpectedly at Alejandra's house, entering through the back door in an attempt to catch her with another man. He then allegedly attacked Alejandra, who was in the bathroom trying to assemble a nightstand. She was forced to defend herself and delivered 2 blows to the back of her ex-husband's head. On June 14, 2012, the court delivered its verdict. Considering the evidence presented by her defense team and the fact that she had 2 young children, Alejandra was sentenced to 1 year and 4 months in prison. However, thanks to the efforts of her lawyers and her father's financial support, her prison term was commuted to a suspended sentence. A few months later, her team filed an appeal, requesting that the charges be dropped. The basis of the appeal was that Alejandra had acted in self-defense. Human rights activists rallied around her, calling for a jury trial and portraying her as a victim of domestic violence. The court reviewed her case and ultimately handed down an acquittal. After her release, Alejandra resumed her work as a psychological counselor. She cultivated an image as a victim of gender inequality who had fought for her rights and won. This newfound image boosted Alejandra's popularity among potential clients. She soon met Alan Carrera Cuellar, a wealthy Mexican businessman and the son of Adrian Carrera Francis. Alan was tall, handsome, and impressive. His father had previously headed the Special Services Department for the Central District and had achieved significant success in his career. Soon Alan expanded his business, creating a chain of construction stores that opened across the country. However, while part of his business was legitimate, another part was secretly linked to crime. This connection led to his father's removal from his position after one of Alan's financial frauds was exposed. Furthermore, Alan had a stake in a criminal group that transported psychotropic substances to the United States. Their base, located in a border town, was guarded by corrupt police officers and controlled a small portion of the psychoactive substance trade in the South. Alan's father was found to be involved in his son's activities, and after providing a statement to the police, he faced a 20-year prison sentence. Nevertheless, Adrian Carrera was released early on July 18, 2000, as part of the Witness Protection Program. Upon release, he dedicated himself to his son and legitimate business ventures. His son, Alan Carrera, quickly adopted his father's views and experiences. After graduating from college, Alan followed in his father's footsteps and became an entrepreneur, showing particular interest in a household appliance store that he successfully managed despite his young age. This business was smaller than his father's but generated a decent income. Alan was always surrounded by women, yet he had been in love with a classmate since childhood, whom he eventually married. She was intelligent, attractive, and came from a good family. The marriage, though brief, was vibrant and resulted in a beautiful daughter. However, Alan's frequent absence from home due to work led to the breakdown of their marriage, ultimately ending in divorce. Alan struggled to move on from his high school sweetheart. He found no joy in new books and was immersed himself by loneliness and sadness, which led him to develop a drinking problem. To overcome his prolonged depression and alcohol addiction, Alan tried various methods, including books, AA meetings, and therapy. Eventually, he met with Dr. Alberto, a renowned psychiatrist. Meanwhile, Alan's ex-wife, Maria, was also dealing with the aftermath of their difficult divorce. Her father was going through a similar experience. Despite their separation, Maria couldn't shake off her loneliness and still considered Alan the only man in her life. She decided to seek professional help and visited a therapist. However, the psychiatrist who had been helping Alan recover explained that due to ethical reasons, he couldn't counsel both spouses. He recommended that Maria seek guidance from a different therapist, Alejandra. However, it's notable that Alejandra's relationship with Maria wasn't transparent, as she didn't disclose that her father was involved. Alejandra soon realized Alan could be a suitable match. Alan was described as a pleasant and wealthy man in his prime. Without hesitation, Alejandra asked Maria to bring Alan in for another session. According to Alejandra, she could resolve their issues in a single session. During the session, Alejandra and her father put their plan to seduce the Alan into action. It didn't take long to get results. Immediately after the session, Alan asked Alejandra out for coffee to discuss family issues. Initially, she declined, citing medical ethics, but they went on a date that same evening. A romantic affair quickly developed between them. However, Maria soon discovered their relationship and was shocked. She considered reporting Alejandra to the medical ethics committee but decided against it. As a skilled therapist, Alejandra convinced Maria to let the situation go, attributing Maria's concerns to jealousy and an unwillingness to move on from her ex-husband. According to Alejandra, holding on to these feelings would prevent a happy future. Maria chose not to attend therapy sessions with Alan after they ended. Around the same time, Alan's relationship with Alejandra progressed quickly. Within a few months of meeting, they moved in together. 2 months later, they decided to get married, but Alan was unaware of Alejandra's past issues and the reasons for her previous divorce. In April 2014, Alan visited his parents and took the opportunity to discuss his upcoming wedding. His parents were surprised to learn about the wedding and his partner, Alejandra, as they had never heard of her before. The marriage was registered a week after Alan met with his parents. Notably, Alejandra asked Alan not to invite her friends and family to the wedding, citing a modest budget as the reason. However, her father did attend the ceremony. At first, their life seemed like a dream come true. They were young, happy, and had many plans and aspirations. However, this didn't last long. Alejandra's volatile temperament soon became apparent. The relationship between them began to deteriorate rapidly. Alan was a private person who kept his personal life to himself, even from friends. As a result, few people knew what was happening behind closed doors. However, it was clear that the relationship was strained, and they no longer appeared happy. After marrying Alejandra, Alan distanced himself from his family. When his parents weren't invited to the wedding, leading to a complete breakdown in communication. Alan's friends noticed that his wife was becoming increasingly anxious and short-tempered, often behaving inappropriately. After a few embarrassing incidents, Alan became ashamed and started to limit their social interactions. Their arguments became a daily occurrence, often with no apparent reason or justification. Alejandra discovered her husband Alan's infidelity by snooping through his phone one evening. The racy messages from other women were the final straw. She claimed that when she confronted him about his cheating, he became violent, insulting, and humiliating. Feeling that the marriage was beyond repair, Alejandra decided to take drastic action. Instead of seeking therapy or counseling, she turned to a more sinister solution. Her focus shifted to devising the perfect plan to murder Alan. Alan, oblivious to his wife's intentions, continued his daily routine. He remained distant from his family, only making an effort to attend the annual family gathering to celebrate his grandfather's birthday. Alan attended the feast, but his parents made it clear that his wife, Alejandra, was not a welcome guest in their home. This snub infuriated Alejandra and further strained the relationship. Little did they know, this would be the last time the family saw Alan alive. On October 31, 2014, Alan sent a text message to his family, saying he had arrived home safely after his birthday party. However, he hasn't been in touch since then, and his absence from work for several days was unusual, as he was always responsible and diligent about his job. With the launch of a new business venture approaching, Alan's presence was crucial. But Alejandra had a sinister plan, which she set in motion after Alan returned from his birthday celebration. The couple had another argument, and Alejandra decided to eliminate her husband. Alejandra spiked his milk with a powerful sleeping pill, which Alan typically drank before bed, and then smothered him with a pillow. Alejandra took pleasure in watching her husband struggle to regain consciousness, pathetically trying to remove the pillow and take a breath. The most challenging part, however, was disposing of the body, a task she hadn't had time to plan for. Alejandra was in a desperate situation, as her husband Alan was too heavy for her to move on her own. With time running out, she rushed to her neighbor's vegetable garden to borrow an electric saw. She used the saw to cut Alan's body into pieces. This behavior seemed like something only a true sadist could accomplish. After dismembering the body, Alejandra packed the parts into garbage bags, taking the precaution of cutting off fingers and pulling teeth to hinder identification if the body was discovered. She stuffed the bags into suitcases to make it easier to remove the remains from the house without arousing suspicion. However, her plan was foiled as dawn approached. Alejandra struggled to leave the house with the heavy suitcases unnoticed. An elderly neighbor, who was awake due to insomnia, watched from her window and grew concerned about Alejandra's early and suspicious departure. It seemed strange that her husband wasn't helping her with the heavy luggage, and Alejandra's constant glancing around only added to the neighbor's unease. At dawn, Alejandra returned home, surprising her vigilant neighbor even more than before. It was later discovered that she had dispersed bags containing her ex-husband's remains across different neighborhoods to conceal her actions. As a new day began, she resumed her daily routine. On November 6, 2014, Mexican police made a gruesome discovery, a human torso with no teeth and no fingers. The entire police force was alerted due to the extreme brutality of the incident. Within a day, additional body parts were found in various locations throughout the city. Notably, the distance between the locations where the body parts were found was substantial. This would later be linked to Alejandra's prolonged absence from home. All the discovered body parts were sent to a leading forensic laboratory, where experts promptly confirmed that they belonged to the same individual. To avoid raising suspicions, Alejandra sent messages to Alan's relatives, claiming they were going on vacation and would be unreachable. Unbeknownst to her, Alan had recently distanced himself from his family and wasn't in contact with them. However, Alejandra's plan was foiled when her father, Alberto, called Alan's father's house to inquire about Alejandra's whereabouts. Alberto was concerned because he hadn't heard from her in a while, and her patients were worried about missing their counseling sessions. Later, Alberto called Alan's relatives again, informing them that Alejandra had been found and forcibly admitted to a clinic due to depression caused by her husband's infidelity. This alarming news prompted Alan's relatives to try and locate him, but they were unsuccessful. As a result, Alan's family sought police assistance. Forensic experts compared the remains of a recently discovered corpse with Alan's characteristics and confirmed a 100% match. Alan's relatives also identified the body, which was especially distressing for his grandfather. Shortly after the identification, his grandfather fell ill with heart disease and lost. The investigation led to a search warrant for Alan's home and office, where a patch of freshly dug earth was found in the backyard. Upon further digging, fingers and teeth were discovered. Alejandra was immediately apprehended, and traces of blood were found in one of the rooms, on the car trunk, and in the garage. Initially, Alejandra denied her guilt, hoping to escape punishment as she had with her previous husband's case. However, the investigation quickly resolved the case, aided by the testimony of an elderly witness whose account matched Alan's estimated time of death. Alejandra had used her position to obtain a powerful sleeping pill, a medication only accessible to doctors. This new evidence further implicated her in the case, establishing a link between Alejandra and the brutal murder of her husband. CCTV cameras played a crucial role in tracing Alan's movements, confirming that he entered the house but never left. The footage also showed that suitcases were removed from the house. On December 10, 2014, the jury delivered its verdict, sentencing Alejandra to life imprisonment for murder with brutality, attempted concealment of the crime, and abuse of her official position. Despite her father's efforts to use his connections and bribes to spare Alejandra from imprisonment, he was ultimately unsuccessful. However, he did manage to have the trial closed to the public and press, thereby minimizing further publicity. However, his actions were ultimately driven by self-interest and a desire to advance his career. As a result, his reputation as a specialist has been severely damaged, and it is unlikely that anyone will seek his expertise again. This is largely due to his failure to recognize the problems with his own daughter and the fact that he raised her to be a ruthless and calculating individual. The trial also brought to light the case of Alejandra's first husband, whose death had occurred under suspicious circumstances. Although the passage of time had made it difficult to gather evidence, there were suspicions that Alejandra's father may have been involved in the incident. Some even speculated that he had colluded with his daughter and that their actions had been motivated by a twisted scientific interest. Despite these suspicions, no concrete evidence was found to support this theory. Following numerous appeals from the victims' families, the sentence was ultimately increased to death. This was a highly unusual outcome, as such sentenced are extremely rare in Mexico, particularly in modern times. Alejandra has been denied the opportunity to appeal the case, and her property, including their house, will be transferred to Alan's family. However, this offers little comfort, as the loss of a loved one can never be fully compensated. It has become clear that Alejandra was a pragmatic and cruel individual with significant mental health issues, despite medical examinations initially suggesting that she was sane. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tina Watson. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977. She was adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas on January 24, 1980. Tina met her future husband, Gabe Watson, while attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and they started dating in January 2001. Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition called paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT. Despite this, she took diving lessons in January 2003 and earned her certification before marrying Gabe on October 11, 2003. At the time of their wedding, Gabe was a qualified rescue diver with 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times. As Tina and Gabe's wedding day approached, Tina's anxiety grew. At 26 years old, she had already experienced 2 failed relationships and was now attempting marriage for the second time. Her first relationship with Scott McCulloch ended due to her mother's disapproval. Although her mother didn't have specific reasons, she wanted a better life for Tina and felt she was rushing into marriage. Tina and Scott eventually parted ways. Her second relationship with Stan Marks also failed, but this time, her parents weren't involved. They simply couldn't overcome their differences and mutually decided to end the relationship. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, at a party with friends, that Tina met Gabe Watson. Their relationship wasn't sparked by love at first sight but rather by mutual support after recent breakups. 2 years into their relationship, Gabe proposed to Tina. Having learned from past experiences, Tina agreed, but only if she had her parents' blessing. In 2003, Gabe decided to ask Tina's parents for their blessing in a romantic gesture, choosing Valentine's Day. However, since Tina's father was away, the dinner was rescheduled for February 15th. During the dinner, Gabe announced his decision to spend the rest of his life with Tina. Tina's father, Tommy, responded with a straightforward question, "Do you love Tina?" However, instead of answering, Watson stuttered and remained silent. His father dismissed this reaction as mere awkwardness. Tommy then posed the same question to Tina, but she also avoided a direct answer. Instead, she expressed her fear of being alone at 26 years old. After considering their responses, Tommy gave his blessing to the young couple. The wedding preparations were well underway, with Tina preoccupied with her attire, guest list, and other details. Meanwhile, Watson was solely focused on planning their honeymoon. He had already decided on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, where he intended to go diving. There isn't any consulting Tina about her preferences. To explore the sunken ship, Townsville Titanic, which sank in 1911, Gabe wanted Tina to learn scuba diving. However, Tina wasn't interested in diving, unlike Gabe, who was an experienced scuba diver with 55 dives under his belt. He had even completed a rescue diving course. Gabe would occasionally take Tina scuba diving in a pool with calm water and lifeguard supervision, but that was the extent of her experience. Gabe gave Tina an ultimatum: if she didn't learn to dive by their honeymoon, she would have to stay home while he went on his adventures. Gabe took out a loan to buy Tina her own diving equipment and pay for her lessons. However, Tina's first instructor was unimpressed with her skills and warned Gabe that she wasn't suited for open ocean diving. Gabe was furious and refused to listen, accusing the instructor of being a poor teacher and discontinuing the classes. The second instructor promptly gave Tina a passing grade, but also made a comment that she only made an effort to impress her future husband. Tina and Gabe got married on October 11th, and 2 days later, they embarked on a trip to Australia, which was funded by their wedding gifts totaling $10,000. During their honeymoon, Gabe dedicated some time to making Tina happy. They explored Sydney, visited the Sydney Aquarium, and went to the zoo. Although Tina was initially excited, her mood changed as they approached their visit to the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they traveled to Townsville and boarded a boat in the evening, heading to a renowned destination popular among divers. However, employees at the diving company later reported that Tina and Gabe appeared inexperienced with diving equipment. Despite Gabe having completed diving courses and having some experience, he seemed uncertain about the equipment, handling it as if it were his first time. Before diving, Gabe assisted Tina in passing the required exam, which typically should be conducted individually. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined. The dive log noted a strong current that day, a crucial detail in the events that unfolded. As they prepared for the dive, Gabe helped Tina with the equipment they had purchased in the US. He rented an 11-liter tank for himself but chose an 8.5-liter tank for Tina, a volume considered small and potentially hazardous given her limited experience. Initially, the dive to the Townsville Titanic wreck was not possible. Tina needed an additional air tank, which stopped her from reaching the required depth. Furthermore, Gabe's underwater computer was not working. The computer calculates the needed diving and ascent speeds and shows the oxygen levels in the cylinders. After returning to the boat and resolving the computer issue, they attempted the dive again. The wreck was located 49 feet below the surface, and Tina was the first to descend, with Gabe following closely behind. According to Gabe's account, everything seemed normal at first. However, at some point, Tina stopped, began waving at him, and then signaled that she wanted to ascend. Gabe immediately recognized that she was panicking, which was not an uncommon occurrence for her. As they were already halfway to the surface, Gabe decided to calm Tina down and maintain their current depth for a while, rather than continuing the dive, allowing her to psychologically adjust to the pressure. Gabe said that Tina had been breathing deeply, which had not been safe, and Gabe had seen that Tina was starting to sink. Gabe had attempted to grab her belt to keep her afloat, but Tina had swung her arm forcefully, knocking his mask off. As Gabe had quickly put his mask back on, Tina had drifted further away. Gabe had tried swimming towards her but had been unable to reach her. Gabe had then made the decision to return to the surface to seek help from the lifeguards. During his ascent, Gabe had met two other swimmers, but despite his attempts to signal for help, the swimmer had ignored him. It's worth noting that there were two Asian men in the vicinity, but neither corroborated Gabe's account of seeking help. Subsequent police analysis of underwater computer readings revealed that Gabe had indeed attempted to swim after his wife for a short while before giving up. However, his ascent to the surface was controlled, as he stopped at each designated depth level as instructed. Other divers at the scene claimed that Gabe had sufficient opportunity to rescue his wife, but failed to act. The incident occurred early in the dive, and Gabe had enough oxygen to swim to the bottom and back to the surface. Rescuers on the ship responded quickly, locating Tina's body at a depth of 82 feet. Despite their efforts, including 40 minutes of artificial respiration on the deck, Tina was pronounced dead. Witnesses reported that Gabe kept his distance from his wife's body, appearing indifferent to the situation, and even exhibiting carefree behavior such as smiling with other passengers on the way to shore, which he later denied in court. The autopsy results for Tina revealed some inconsistencies. Although there were no obvious signs of a violent death, there were bruises on her neck and blood in her nostrils. However, these findings are not unusual given the 82-foot depth at which her body was discovered. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system, but high levels of ibuprofen and paracetamol, which are commonly used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The official cause of death was listed as drowning, but it is possible that she was already oxygen deprived before succumbing to drowning. Tina's diving gear was inspected by the Australian Water Police, but no issues were found. Initially, the police could have dismissed the incident as an accident caused by an inexperienced diver neglecting safety protocols, a sadly common occurrence. However, there were some suspicious aspects to the case, such as the inconclusive autopsy results. Additionally, Watson's unusual behavior, as reported by the diving team, didn't align with the expected actions of a grieving husband. These inconsistencies made it difficult to close the case, leading to a prolonged investigation. Gabe began to suspect that the detectives were investigating him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as a tragic accident and sought to hold their son-in-law accountable either for their daughter's death or for failing to assist her. The police observed that the suspect, Gabe, was in a state of shock. He displayed erratic behavior, crying and laughing uncontrollably, and twitching nervously. Gabe requested to call his father and complained of ear pain. He also begged his father to inform his wife's parents about the tragic event. Later that night, Gabe was released from police custody. He proceeded to the yacht owned by the company that had organized the diving trip to the reef. Gabe asked the company for a place to stay for the night, citing that the trip was initially supposed to last 2 days but was cut short due to his wife's death. He also requested a partial refund for the dive, as he never got to see the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother arrived in Townsville to support her son and help him find a lawyer. At Gabe's request, they visited the morgue, where he wanted to see his wife one last time. Although Gabe was still considered a suspect, his actions were those of a grieving husband. He cried, held his wife's hand, and begged for her forgiveness, unaware that a police officer was standing outside, recording his actions on a tape recorder. Detective Lawrence questioned Gabe in court about his earlier statement next to Tina at the morgue, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Lawrence sought clarification on what Gabe meant by it. Gabe had been traveling home with his wife's body and had a layover in Oakland. During this time, he sought medical attention for a sore ear and was held for evaluation at the airport. The investigation suggested that Gabe did this to avoid meeting Tina's father. However, it was revealed that ear problems are common among divers, which may have explained Gabe's condition. At Tina's funeral on November 5th, Gabe met with his father-in-law, Watson. In a visible gesture, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring and placed it on his finger, covering his own ring. He also removed her earrings and handed them to Watson. After this encounter, the Thomas family did not interact with Gabe again that day. Later in the trial, Gabe was questioned about removing his wife's jewelry during her funeral. He simply smiled and shrugged, seemingly unwilling to confirm or deny it. Those who knew Gabe had mixed opinions about his character. Some found him to be kind and amusing, while others considered him cruel and controlling. However, they all agreed that Gabe and his wife, Tina, appeared unhappy together. Tina's friends corroborated what she had shared with her father at a family dinner on February 15th, that she had married Gabe out of fear of being alone and that this decision ultimately led to her demise. Furthermore, one of Tina's friends revealed that Tina had confided in her about being taken to an insurance company by Gabe, where she was forced to purchase a life insurance policy at an inflated rate, naming Gabe as the beneficiary. This account was verified by the insurance agent, who confirmed the details. The cab driver who drove Gabe and Tina to their yacht also testified that Tina had cried throughout the ride, while Gabe ignored her. Another friend of Tina's, Amanda Phillips, came forward with a disturbing story that shed more light on the true nature of Gabe and Tina's relationship. It was revealed that Gabe had secretly recorded Tina using the bathroom, edited the footage, and incorporated it into a Christmas celebration video. That would have been acceptable, but he chose to do it in front of a full house of guests during a general viewing. As everyone tried to explain to him that his actions were in poor taste, he laughed loudly while they gestured in frustration, tapping their fingers against their temples. Although removing jewelry during a funeral may seem like a shocking and condemnatory act by Gabe, a more disturbing incident occurred in 2008. During the trial, the jury was shown footage of Watson visiting Tina's grave, taking all the flowers, and carrying them away. The flowers were later found in a nearby trash can. Tina's father had noticed the missing flowers and set up a hidden camera among the monuments to catch the thief. However, he was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was outraged by his actions. In court, Gabe claimed that he and his wife had discussed their own death on an extreme honeymoon and that she had requested no flowers on her grave. This excuse sounded strange and unlikely. Gabe claimed that Tina drowned while he attempted to put a mask on her face underwater. However, it was later revealed that this was impossible without an additional air source, which in this case was Tina's oxygen supply. In November 2008, Australian authorities arrested Gabe. His trial began on June 5, 2009, where he pleaded guilty to failing to save his wife. As a result, he was charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Upon completing his sentence, Gabe returned to the U.S. However, a year later, he was charged with first-degree murder by a U.S. court. The prosecution alleged that his motive was to collect insurance payouts following his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer defended him by shifting the blame onto the diving company, claiming that its employees had failed to ensure tourist safety and were now afraid of losing their business due to potential license revocation. Regarding the insurance payout, Gabe received $33,000. However, he spent significantly more on lawyers and additional expert analysis. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that Gabe's expenditure was an attempt to avoid suspicion, as he could not assume he would be believed. The prosecutor also disputed the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife. Gabe addressed the jury, reflecting on the past 7 years since the tragedy. He expressed that he has thought about that terrible day every day, and the public has blamed him, calling him a murderer. Gabe noted that nobody has shown him understanding or empathy, except for his late wife's parents, who he understands will never forgive him. Gabe acknowledged that he can be accused of not doing enough to save his wife, Tina, but he believes he has already been punished for that. He stated that he was afraid to die and wanted to live, which is why he didn't drown with his wife 7 years ago. Gabe emphasized that he still wants to live now. The court found no evidence of Gabe's guilt, and the jury declared him not guilty. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Marcos Matsunaga. Marcos Matsunaga was a member of one of Brazil's wealthiest families and headed Yoki, their business that produced a wide range of food products. Yoki was founded by Marcos's grandfather, Yoshizo Cadano, who had immigrated to Brazil. The company name, Yoki, was derived from the first letters of Yoshizo's surname and first name. Yoki's origins date back to the mid-20th century when it started as a small flour milling operation. Despite being formed during a time of crisis and war, the business not only survived but thrived, eventually expanding into a global company with a diverse product line. Born into a wealthy family, Marcos had never experienced hardship or denial. As the successor to the family business, he inherited the company built by his grandfather and father. With this foundation, Marcos had the potential to become the family's first billionaire, a goal he pursued throughout his life. However, his ambitious plans were ultimately unfulfilled. Everyone who knew Marcos personally described him as a skilled and successful businessman. He not only preserved but also significantly increased the family's wealth, generating substantial profits. However, Marcos had a difficult personality. He was demanding, arrogant, and controlling, particularly with those around him. Additionally, he struggled with his physical appearance, having been overweight since childhood, wearing glasses due to vision problems, and being short and somewhat awkward. These issues led to difficulties in his interactions with peers from an early age. Marcos had few friends, and women tended to avoid him because of his unusual demeanor. For a long time, he was unable to form lasting, meaningful relationships. Despite his wealth and business success, he couldn't sustain romantic connections beyond a couple of dates. His arrogance and ego often repelled women, leading him to seek the company of escorts and sex workers. There is very little information available about his first wife. It is known that he married out of desperation and pressure from his relatives, rather than love or passion. Despite this, the marriage lasted several years, but both spouses quickly regretted their decision. The young wife initially tried to tolerate his difficult personality, hoping they could become a happy couple over time. However, she was mistaken, and they grew further apart over the years. Marcos frequently cheated on her without attempting to hide or justify it. He typically found mistresses on websites offering intimacy for money. One such mistress was Alice, an escort with a portfolio on these platforms. Marcos noticed her, a bright and attractive blonde with a beautiful figure, and began regularly inviting her on dates, generously paying for them. Alice was 6 years younger than him and was born into a poor and dysfunctional family in a high-crime area of the city. She never knew her father, and her mother struggled with heavy drinking and was often involved with men who shared her addiction. As a result, Alice had a difficult and joyless childhood, facing repeated physical and emotional abuse from her mother's roommates at a very young age. As soon as she finished school, Alice left her troubled home life and neighborhood behind. She took nursing courses, which led to a job at a hospice. However, she soon realized that caring for terminally ill patients was not fulfilling her dreams or utilizing her full potential. As a sensitive and vulnerable young woman, Alice became deeply attached to her patients, and each death felt like a personal loss. A few years later, Alice decided to pursue higher education and change careers. She chose to study law, which she believed would offer her more opportunities and open doors in life. After preparing for admission, Alice scored well on the entrance exams. However, her modest nursing salary was not enough to cover the cost of her studies. Alice was alone with no one to turn to, having cut ties with her family after leaving home. To support herself, she decided to monetize her physical appearance and signed up on an escort services website. With the site's help, she created an attractive profile, and soon, wealthy men took notice of the young and beautiful blonde. Through her escort work, Alice earned a good income, enough to cover her education expenses and support herself. However, she intended to quit this line of work once she graduated and found a job in her field. During this time, Alice met Marcos, a regular client who showered her with gifts and openly dated her. Although Alice knew Marcos was married, she never imagined that one of the country's wealthiest men would leave his wife for her. Alice Matsunoga's story resembled a Cinderella tale. A poor girl from a disadvantaged background, working as an escort, captures the heart of a multimillionaire who falls deeply in love with her. Marcos lost his mind over Alice, but it's unclear if she deliberately tried to win him over. 6 months into their relationship, Marcos decided he wanted to be with Alice long-term, so he filed for divorce from his first wife without hesitation. He began introducing Alice as his fiancée to everyone. To avoid revealing how they really met in Alice's occupation, Marcos and Alice fabricated a story about meeting casually in a cafe. They stuck to this version, and even Marcos's closest relatives and friends didn't suspect the truth. However, Alice wasn't warmly received by Marcos's family, the Matsunogas. His parents suspected that Alice had used her charm to capture Marcos's heart, despite his unattractive appearance, and was now pretending to overlook his difficult personality. Nevertheless, when Marcos announced his plans to divorce his first wife and marry Alice, no one strongly objected. Marcos organized an extravagant traditional wedding, complete with a white dress, numerous guests, and a large, multi-tiered cake. Following the wedding, he relocated his wife to his spacious and luxurious mansion, where she took on the role of mistress. Matsunogi was renowned for his passion for collecting expensive wines and rare firearms. His home featured a vast wine cellar, where bottles were meticulously arranged by year and country of origin. Additionally, the house had a secret room dedicated to his extensive collection of firearms and edged weapons, which adorned the walls from floor to ceiling. Marcos took great pride in his collections and continually sought to expand them. However, his home was also overflowing with antiques, luxury items, and modern art pieces, which were somewhat tastelessly displayed on the walls and every available surface. After the wedding, they decided to start a family, but despite their efforts, Alice struggled to conceive for an extended period. Consequently, they opted for in vitro fertilization, but success was not immediate. When their daughter was finally born, it seemed that their happiness knew no bounds. Marcos and Alice were devoted to raising their baby girl, planning for her future, and later, exploring the world together as a family, immersing themselves in diverse cultures and traditions. Their daughter was raised with love, care, and every luxury, like a true little princess. However, Marcos and his wife, Alice, shared a unique common interest: big game hunting. In reality, hunting had always been Marcos's passion. He had previously tried to share this hobby with other women in his life, including his first wife, but they had all found it repulsive. Marcos had given up hope of finding someone who shared his enthusiasm. Many people now believe that Alice took up hunting to gain Marcos's favor and win his heart. Initially, they visited shooting ranges together, where Alice learned to handle various firearms. Later, they ventured into the woods to hunt wild animals. Alice showed no qualms about taking the lives of animals, treating it as a competition: either you succeed or you don't. Marcos admired this attitude and enjoyed watching his wife skillfully handle her weapons and track her prey. He also taught Alice how to hunt and prepare wild game such as boars and deer. They would skin and carve the animals together, using specialized tools like large knives, cleavers, and axes to separate the body parts. The family didn't have traditional pets like cats or dogs. Instead, they kept poisonous snakes in specially designed terrariums that mimicked their natural habitats. This was a dream come true for Marcos, who had always been fascinated by snakes but had been discouraged from keeping them by his first wife. Alice had won Marcos over by embracing his unconventional hobbies. By the spring of 2012, Marcos was on the verge of making the deal of a lifetime, one that would catapult him to billionaire status and take his income to new heights. He was busy negotiating with potential business partners, planning to sell the family company and invest the profits in a lucrative new venture. Marcos was rarely at home due to his complete absorption in work and the realization of his ambitious plans. He and his wife resided in an elite apartment complex in the city's business center, near the main office of his company. However, Marcos spent most of his time away, leaving his young wife alone and bored in their luxurious apartment with a panoramic city view. Marcos' work schedule was tightly packed with meetings, business discussions, and specialist consultations, often keeping him away from home overnight. Despite this, he promised his wife that once the deal was finalized, their lives would undergo a significant transformation. But on May 19, 2012, the eve of a billion-dollar deal, Marcos vanished without a trace. His wife, Alice, did not report Marcos missing until the next day. She believed he was at work, attending a scheduled meeting that could have lasted into the night and early morning. Marcos was supposed to meet a business partner and had warned Alice that he might spend the night at the office before heading straight to the meeting. However, when Marcos failed to return home and stopped answering his phone, Alice grew concerned and filed a missing persons report. Police quickly discovered that Marcos had missed both the evening and morning meetings, which was unusual for him. This led them to suspect that Marcos might have been kidnapped, and they expected a ransom demand to be made to his family within hours. Despite this, 24 hours passed, followed by another 24 hours, without any ransom demands. As time went on, hopes of finding Marcos alive began to dwindle. Meanwhile, investigators questioned Marcos's relatives, friends, and business partners to see if he had any enemies or if anyone might benefit from his disappearance or the disruption of his upcoming deal. However, they were unable to identify anyone who might have wanted Marcos dead. Marcos was a skilled businessman who made strategic decisions that generally benefited everyone. However, his personal life was marred by infidelity. His wife, Alice, discovered that he was cheating on her with a woman named Natasha. Despite his promise to end the affair after Alice threatened to divorce him, Marcos continued to see Natasha, albeit more discreetly. Alice suspected that the affair was ongoing and hired a private detective to gather evidence. The detective uncovered photographs and videos of Marcos and Natasha on romantic dates at restaurants and venues that Marcos and Alice regularly visited. It seemed that Marcos was openly flaunting his infidelity, taking his mistress to places where he was well known and where his wife might find out. As it was later revealed, Natasha Lima, a businessman, was discovered on the same escort services website where he had first met Alice. They had been together for approximately 5 months, during which time he gifted her an expensive car and paid a substantial sum of money for Natasha to delete her profile from the site. Alice presented photos and videos as evidence of her husband's infidelity to Marcos's parents. She mentioned that she had shown all this to Marcos the day before his disappearance, but instead of apologizing and asking for forgiveness, he packed his belongings, informed his wife that he was leaving her, and then departed from their apartment, vanishing without a trace. Based on Alice's account, it seemed that her husband had given in to his desires and decided to run away with his new mistress. However, those who knew Matsunaga unanimously agreed that he was too invested in the business, which his family had built over decades, to simply abandon it and disappear. The answers to many questions were uncovered about a week later when a passerby discovered scattered garbage bags containing human remains in a deserted area roughly 50 kilometers from Marcos's residence. The man immediately notified the police of his gruesome discovery. The victim was soon identified as Marcus Matsunaga, a missing person who had been searched for nationwide. According to experts, Matsunaga was shot in the head and then dismembered. His body was packed into garbage bags and dumped on the outskirts of the city. The killer's skills with a carving knife suggested they were either a surgeon or an experienced butcher. This conclusion was drawn from the precise cuts made to separate the body parts. The investigation initially lacked concrete leads, so it began by reviewing the last known location of the deceased. The elite residential complex where Matsunaga lived with his wife and daughter had multiple surveillance cameras, and their footage was carefully examined. The evening before Matsunaga went missing, he and his wife ordered food to be delivered to their home. Security footage shows Matsunaga taking the elevator to the first floor, then returning to his apartment with pizza boxes in hand. He entered the apartment and never left again, not that evening, overnight, or the next day. Despite this, his wife was seen leaving the apartment the following morning with 3 large, wheeled suitcases. The footage shows Alice struggling to move heavy suitcases, which sparked the investigators' suspicions about their contents. On the same day, she was taken into custody and questioned at the police station. Initially, she denied any wrongdoing, sticking to her story that her husband had left her for another woman. However, when shown the elevator footage, she broke down in tears and began to open up. Alice revealed that her marriage had been troubled for a long time, and her husband's behavior had become increasingly abusive. He constantly belittled her, bringing up her past work as an escort and claiming he had rescued her. He also controlled every aspect of her life, isolating her from friends and criticizing her parenting. When Alice mentioned divorce, Marcos threatened to leave her with nothing, take their daughter, and restrict her access to the child. On the evening of the incident, Alice confronted her husband with photos of him and his mistress, which only enraged him. He physically abused her, and Alice's memories of what happened next are hazy. She doesn't recall how she obtained the gun used to shoot her husband. Later, realizing what she had done, Alice attempted to cover up the crime by disposing of the body and making it seem like her husband had vanished. Alice, a former nurse familiar with human anatomy, had been taught by her husband how to dissect animal carcasses. They had the necessary tools at home, making the process of cutting up her husband's body a matter of technique. This gruesome task was carried out while their young daughter slept in the next room. However, Alice's testimony raised many doubts and questions from the start. Further investigation revealed that Alice received photos and videos of her husband's infidelity from a private detective on May 20th, after she had already killed him. She presented these to her husband's parents, claiming he had abandoned her for his mistress. A witness, Natasha Lima, testified in court that Marcos wanted a divorce but was afraid of Alice, describing her as mentally unstable and capable of terrible things. Natasha stated that the last time she saw Marcos, he complained about the constant family scandals and shared his plans to move to Florida after selling his company. He intended to start a new business and leave Alice behind, as he planned to divorce her and move on with his life. Experts made a disturbing discovery. There was blood in Marcos's lungs, indicating he was still alive and trying to breathe when his head was severed from his body. This contradicts Alice's claim that he died instantly from a bullet wound. Furthermore, the pathologist found that the bullet entered Marcos's head at an unusual angle, suggesting he was not expecting to be shot and made no attempt to defend himself. This finding contradicts Alice's account of Marcos attacking her and her need to defend herself. Most witnesses testified that Marcos, despite his difficult personality and hurtful words, never physically harmed anyone. It appears that Alice fabricated the episode, taking advantage of Marcos's inability to refute her claims. Ultimately, the court found Alice guilty of premeditated murder with extreme cruelty and attempting to cover up the crime. Alice Matsuniga received a 20-year prison sentence, a punishment many deemed too lenient for her crime. The victim's parents are now tasked with raising their granddaughter. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Agnes Klavina. Agnes Klavina was born on July 8, 1984, in Riga, the capital of Latvia. She was the younger of two daughters, with her sister Greta being only a couple of years older. As a result, the two sisters were extremely close and friendly. Their parents made every effort to provide their daughters with a good education and support their dreams. Agnes developed into a sociable, cheerful, and active individual. She excelled in school, participated in sports, and had many friends. Her future aspirations involved a career in tourism or entertainment, as she loved traveling and organizing leisure activities. With her striking appearance and impressive physique, Agnes consistently received attention and compliments from men. From a young age, Agnes had numerous admirers vying for her attention. Following her graduation from school, she worked in the service industry while taking language courses and studying tourism management. At the age of 20, Agnes relocated from Latvia to the United Kingdom, settling in London. She believed that this move would provide her with greater opportunities to unlock her full potential and showcase her talents. Parents and an older sister were supportive of her decision. After the move, Agnes met Michael Mills, an older man with a good education and a thriving business. He owned a small movie theater and entertainment complex, and was considered successful. Agnes and Michael quickly hit it off and began dating. Michael showered Agnes with expensive gifts, and they traveled together, making plans for their future. They were truly in love and happy, and it seemed like a long and prosperous life awaited them. According to those close to Agnes, this was her first true love. She glowed when she was with Michael and dreamed of becoming his wife. In 2014, Agnes was offered a 3-month contract as an administrator at a popular nightclub in Marbella, Spain. Although this meant a temporary move, Agnes didn't want to pass up the opportunity. Michael couldn't leave his job to go with her, but he didn't oppose her signing the contract. For Agnes, it was a chance to gain experience and potentially develop her career in a new field. Marbella is a renowned and appealing resort on the Mediterranean coast, attracting vacationers from worldwide, particularly affluent individuals seeking entertainment and luxury. It's a popular spot for celebrities, athletes, and business moguls. Agnes, being a sociable person, enjoyed working in such a vibrant environment. Before relocating, she visited her family in Latvia and shared the news about her 3-month employment contract. She also announced her plans to marry Michael after returning to England, which delighted her parents and sister. In late May 2014, Agnes moved to Spain with only the essentials, leaving her lover Michael in London. Despite the distance, They maintained daily communication through phone calls and video chats, keeping each other updated on their lives. Agnes Klavina was active on social media, where she shared daily updates about her life through photos, videos, and stories. As a result, she gained a large following of people who were interested in her activities and work. Her posts made it clear that she lived a busy, exciting life and made the most of every day. When her employment contract ended, Agnes decided to extend her stay in Spain for a few more months. It was the start of the peak tourist season in the resort town, and she saw an opportunity to earn a good income. After discussing her plans with her boyfriend, he gave her his support and promised to visit her for a few days. They had been apart for a long time and were eager to see each other. Agnes quickly found a new job as a hostess at an upscale restaurant and renewed her apartment lease. In September, her boyfriend, Michael, visited her as planned. They spent their time together having fun, making plans for their upcoming wedding, and researching honeymoon destinations. However, their time together was short-lived, as Michael returned to London less than a week later. Agnes was left to work in Spain for another month, after which she intended to visit her relatives in Latvia and then join Michael in England. Unfortunately, these plans were not meant to be fulfilled. On September 6th, Agnes went to the Costa del Sol nightclub with her friends. She had told her fiancé about her plans earlier, and he didn't object. At the club, they took pictures and had a good time, with Agnes posting some photos online that night. People who saw her that night remember Agnes wearing a short dress and carrying a small white handbag. As the night ended, Agnes told her friends she wanted to stay a bit longer and would take a taxi home. Her friends weren't worried because Agnes was responsible and hadn't had much to drink. As her friends left, Agnes was talking to a man who had bought her a cocktail. He seemed to be trying to win her over. After that, Agnes disappeared. Despite being in a crowded nightclub, no one saw her leave or knows where she went. The day after Agnes went missing, she failed to show up at work and her phone was turned off. Concerned colleagues and friends alerted the authorities, but the police were slow to act on their missing persons report. As the evening drew in, Michael, Agnes's worried fiancé, contacted her mother, explaining that he had been unable to reach Agnes all day, which was unprecedented. The following day, Agnes's parents and fiancé attempted to file a missing persons report with the Spanish police. However, they were informed that the report would only be considered if it was made in person. Consequently, Agnes's family and Michael flew to Marbella and filed the report 5 days after her disappearance. The investigation began with a search of Agnes's rented apartment. The property appeared as if Agnes had simply stepped out for a short time, with her belongings, including documents, money, and valuable jewelry, still intact. The fridge was stocked with prepared food, and several outfits were laid out on the bed, suggesting that Agnes had chosen what to wear to the club on her last night out. It was clear that Agnes had not returned to her apartment since leaving with her friends. Agnes's phone was switched off, and she stopped posting on social media. She also wasn't responding to any messages. At this point, the police started investigating her disappearance, but a significant amount of time had already passed. Her friends and family created flyers with her picture and distributed them across the city, asking for help in finding her. The media soon picked up the story, and Agnes's disappearance was featured on TV news and the front pages of local newspapers. The investigation advanced after police analyzed CCTV footage from inside and outside the entertainment venue. Although the files had been deleted, specialists were able to recover them. A parking lot exit camera recording showed Agnes being led out of the club around 6 a.m. by a man, apparently against her will. A closer examination of this footage, the last to show Agnes alive, revealed more disturbing details. A man of large build was leading Agnes, gripping her tightly around the waist. Agnes appeared frightened, attempting to break free several times and speaking emotionally. Despite her struggles, the man persisted, eventually forcing her into a Mercedes A63 with tinted windows in the parking lot. At the moment the large man pushed Agnes into the cabin, another man was already inside, while the first man went to the driver's seat. Agnes managed to open the door and tried to escape, but the doorman, standing next to her, intervened. The driver gestured and spoke, and the doorman pushed Agnes back into the car. The driver then handed the doorman something, likely a cash reward. About 6 minutes after Agnes entered the car, her phone was turned off and never turned back on. The vehicle's movement couldn't be tracked due to a lack of CCTV cameras. It became clear that the men in the cabin were the last to contact Agnes. The case was shrouded in secrecy from the start, with investigators signing non-disclosure agreements and information withheld from the press and Agnes's loved ones. 6 months after the incident, Agnes's relatives were shown footage from the club's cameras, which revealed the identities of the 3 men who had last been in contact with Agnes. The large man who forcibly removed her from the club and pushed her into a car was identified as Wesley Capper, the son of a wealthy and influential British millionaire. Also in the car were Craig Porter, a longtime friend of Capper's with no fixed occupation and a history of police attention, and Sean Usman, a dark-skinned doorman. During interrogation, Porter and Usman both claimed they were innocent, stating that Agnes had entered the car voluntarily. Capper's account was that he and a friend had spotted Agnes, a beautiful blonde, at the club and approached her to strike up a conversation. According to Capper, Agnes was already intoxicated, which contradicts the testimony of her friends. However, when offered a drink, she did not refuse. Capper then suggested continuing the party at his luxurious country house, and Agnes allegedly agreed. Agnes reportedly changed her mind about attending a private party at Wesley's house while already in the car. She asked to be dropped off on a dark stretch of road, saying she would take a taxi home. According to the driver, he dropped her off at the requested location, which had no streetlights or CCTV cameras. However, Craig Porter, another passenger, couldn't confirm or deny this account because he was also heavily intoxicated and didn't recall when Agnes was in the car. Craig claimed he fell asleep shortly after leaving the parking lot and didn't notice Agnes's departure. Sean Usman, the doorman, stated that Agnes was drunk but couldn't say if she entered the car voluntarily. He did confirm that when the car stopped, the blonde woman opened the door and almost fell out. Then, at the driver's request, the doorman slammed the car door shut, burning a substantial tip. When questioned, Usman said he didn't believe Agnes was trying to escape by jumping out of the car while it was moving. He thought she might have accidentally opened the door due to intoxication. He also mentioned that Agnes didn't scream or ask for help. However, footage showed Wesley Capper firmly holding Agnes by the waist and wrist, leading her to the car. Wesley claimed Agnes was dizzy, and he was supporting her to prevent her from falling. Later, investigators discovered another suspicious video taken at Soto Grande in southern Spain's Puerta de la Duquesa port. The video, dated September 10th, 4 days after Agnes's disappearance, showed Wesley, Craig, and 2 other men boarding John Capper's luxury yacht. They were carrying a large, heavy-looking suitcase and a rolled-up carpet. When the company returned to Puerta de la Duquesa port a few days later, they had no luggage. After watching the footage, Capper claimed that he and his friends sailed to Ibiza for fun. According to him, the suitcase contained their belongings, and what investigators thought was a carpet was actually bedding. However, he couldn't explain what happened to it afterward. A thorough search of Wesley's yacht and car yielded nothing, as both had been thoroughly cleaned and dry cleaned, eliminating any DNA evidence. Although a long blonde hair was found in a car's trunk, its origin couldn't be determined because the crucial evidence mysteriously disappeared during the investigation. At the trial, the prosecution revealed another peculiar detail. A few hours after Agnes was in the defendant's car, Capper made multiple calls to emergency services but hung up each time without waiting for an answer, as if he was afraid or unsure of his actions. Capper explained that he was drunk and made the calls randomly. The Clavin family's lawyer believed Agnes had been dead for some time, with her body likely on the seabed in the suitcase brought onto the yacht by the suspects. He also thought the case was intentionally delayed, allowing the suspects to eliminate any incriminating evidence. A year and a half after Agnes vanished, Capper, Porter, and Usman were in court, accused of holding her against her will and forcing her into a car. However, due to insufficient evidence, no additional charges could be brought. They were granted bail and discreetly left the courtroom. Agnes's family was understandably outraged, but the judge stood firm. It wasn't until 2019, nearly 5 years after Agnes's disappearance, that the three men were retried. They maintained their innocence, claiming Agnes had entered the car voluntarily. The prosecutor requested that the doorman, Usman, be considered an accomplice to the crime because he assisted the defendants in driving the victim, Agnes, away from the scene. This charge carried a potential 5-year prison sentence for Usman. In his defense, Usman delivered a passionate speech, claiming he was being targeted due to his skin color and inability to afford a good lawyer, as he sent all his earnings to support his impoverished family in Africa. In contrast, the lawyers for Capper and Porter argued that their clients were only guilty of convincing Agnes to get into the car, not of forcing her to do so. According to their version of events, Agnes was dropped off on the road at her request and was waiting for a cab to go home. They suggested that, while intoxicated and unable to defend herself, Agnes might have been kidnapped and killed by someone else. The judge's verdict shocked and outraged the family of the missing young woman because none of the defendants received significant punishment. Usman was acquitted of all charges, while Capper received a 2-year sentence for taking advantage of Agnes's intoxication to persuade her to get into his car. Porter was sentenced to 6 months for his role in the incident. However, both men received suspended sentences and did not serve any time in prison. Instead, they paid Agnes's family a compensation of 101,000 sterling, which was seen as a paltry sum. Agnes's family was disappointed with the outcome and appealed the decision. It was later revealed that both defendants had broken the law again while awaiting the court's decision. Capper, who was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, hit and killed a woman with his car and fled the scene. Porter and his friend, also intoxicated, stole a car after assaulting its owner. Despite the severity of these new crimes, Capper was only sentenced to probation thanks to his lawyer's effective defense. He paid a substantial amount in compensation to the family of the woman he killed but remained free. Porter was less fortunate this time and did go to jail. In 2021, nearly 7 years after Agnes's disappearance, the main suspect faced punishment. Wesley had spent years living a self-destructive lifestyle, excessively consuming alcohol and illicit substances, which severely impacted his health. He was hospitalized and, after seeming to recover, suddenly suffered a stroke. Capper passed away on July 26, 2021, at the age of 44. Around this time, Agnes's parents submitted another appeal to the court. However, since the suspect was now deceased, prosecution was no longer possible. Despite the Supreme Court's pending decision in this complex case, an unexpected development occurred 9 years later. Although Agnes Clavina's body was never found, she was presumed dead. Later, her family, including her parents, sister, and fiancé, accepted their lawyer's theory that the perpetrators had disposed of Agnes's body in a suitcase, which was then loaded onto a yacht and discarded at sea, making it impossible to recover. Nevertheless, in the summer of 2023, 9 years after Agnes vanished, the case took a surprising turn. In mid-June, a gardener at the elite Lida Golf Club in Costa del Sol discovered a mysterious object while cleaning near the coast. Upon closer inspection, it was an old, damaged suitcase. The gardener did not open it and instead called the police. Authorities found human remains inside the suitcase, later identified as belonging to a young woman aged 25 to 35 at the time of death. Further investigation revealed that the suitcase had been in the water for around 10 years before washing the shore. Based on this information, police suspected that the remains might belong to Agnes Klavina, who went missing 9 years ago. To confirm this, experts are currently conducting DNA tests to compare Agnes's DNA with the remains found. The investigation is ongoing, and details have not been made public. If the suspicions are confirmed, the case will be reopened, and surviving suspects will face trial. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rachel O'Reilly. Rachel O'Reilly was born in 1974 in the northern outskirts of County Dublin, Ireland. She was adopted by Rose and Jim Calley at a young age, as her biological parents were not known to her. The Calley, unable to have children of their own, devoted their love to their 5 adopted children, including Rachel. Growing up, Rachel was a diligent and ambitious individual. She excelled in school, participated in sports, assisted her parents with household chores, and avoided causing any trouble. As a result, she developed into a sociable, open, and exceptionally kind person who easily connected with others and steered clear of conflicts. During her teenage years, Rachel developed a passion for softball, regularly competing in tournaments and setting multiple local records. She also formed a strong bond with her adoptive mother, confiding in her and maintaining a close relationship even after she got married and started a family of her own. After graduating from high school, Rachel attended a local university to study marketing. At the same time, she worked in sales at a department store in the city, where she met Joe O'Reilly. Joe O'Reilly was born in 1972 in County Dublin to a humble family. He was the second child and had an older sister. His parents instilled in their children the value of hard work and independence. As a young man, Joe was tall, athletic, and enjoyed softball. After completing high school, he studied advertising through correspondence and worked as a manager in a department store. It was at this department store that he met Rachel, who started working there a few months after Joe. At the time of their meeting, Joe was 19 and Rachel was 17. Joe was immediately drawn to Rachel, taking the initiative to introduce himself to Rachel. Her petite stature and bright smile captivated him. Joe was interested in taking Rachel on a date, but she refused for reasons unknown. Despite this, Joe continued to try to win her over by giving her compliments and surprising her with small gifts like flowers and chocolates at work. However, Rachel remained unresponsive to his efforts. Joe read Rachel's favorite book to find a common conversation topic, but things only improved when Joe discovered Rachel's passion for softball. He joined her at the stadium, walked onto the field during practice, and participated in the game. With his experience and skills in softball, Joe led the team to victory, finally impressing Rachel and having a date. Their relationship progressed quickly. He surprised Rachel with a trip to Paris, where he proposed on the Eiffel Tower. Rachel couldn't resist and agreed to marry him, thinking she had found a fairy tale prince. Years later, they married and had 2 sons. They moved to the Scottish province of Null, purchasing a cozy home perfect for raising their children. After the birth of their eldest son, Rachel left her job to care for her husband and child. 2 years later, they had a second son. At work, Joe demonstrated his capabilities as a reliable, skilled, and diligent specialist. He was always punctual, arriving first and leaving last when necessary. Joe also prioritized fitness, often visiting the gym before work, and even had exercise equipment at home. As their children grew older and started attending kindergarten, Joe's wife Rachel sought to supplement their income. She became a distributor for a well-known cosmetics company and sold household items. This new role allowed her to interact more with their neighbors, who appreciated her kindness and openness. However, as time passed, Joe's presence at home became increasingly scarce. He would only return to sleep, shower, and change clothes, attributing his absence to his demanding job and anticipated promotion. Despite his wife's support, they began to drift apart, and their family relationship declined significantly. In the summer of 2004, a disturbing incident occurred. An anonymous individual sent a letter to Child Protective Services, falsely accusing Rachel of being a bad mother and mistreating her 4- and 2-year-old sons. As a result, a special commission visited the family's home to investigate the allegations. Despite finding no evidence of wrongdoing and receiving positive testimonials from relatives and neighbors about Rachel's parenting, the letter tarnished her reputation. On Monday, October 4, 2004, Rachel's day began normally. Her husband, Joe, left for work at dawn while she and their sons were still asleep. Throughout the day, Joe attempted to contact Rachel several times via text and phone calls, but she didn't respond. He then called their home phone, leaving a worried message on the answering machine, asking Rachel to call him back as soon as possible. In the afternoon, Joe received a concerning call from the kindergarten teacher, informing him that Rachel had failed to pick up the children, which was unprecedented. Joe called his mother-in-law to ask if she knew where Rachel was. When she said she didn't know, Joe asked her to go to their home to check on things. At the same time, Joe went to pick up the kids from kindergarten. When Rose arrived at her daughter's house, she saw Rachel's car in the yard, so she knew Rachel was home. However, the house was dark and quiet, and Rachel didn't answer when Rose called out to her. The first thing Rose noticed was the chaotic state of the house, with cabinets and drawers wide open and their contents scattered all over the floor, resembling a robbery scene. However, Rachel was nowhere to be found. As Rose's mother entered the bedroom, she was met with a horrifying sight. Rachel lay on the floor in a massive pool of her own blood, which was splattered everywhere, on the walls, furniture, and even the ceiling. Rachel's hair was bloody and matted, with her skull visible in some areas. Rose rushed to her daughter, hoping against hope that she might still be alive. But upon touching Rachel's arm, she realized it was cold and stiff, indicating that Rachel had been dead for several hours and that there was no possibility of saving her. Overwhelmed by grief, Rose started screaming and calling out for help before dashing to the phone to dial the police. Her cries for help attracted the attention of the neighbors, including a doctor, who hastened to the scene. He was the first to examine Rachel's body, confirming that she was beyond help. By the time Joe arrived, a crowd had gathered outside the house. Upon learning of his spouse's death, Joe was consumed by anguish, screaming in disbelief as he rushed inside. In the bedroom, beside his wife's lifeless body, Rachel became unhinged. He cried, screamed, and vowed to avenge his wife's brutal murder. The police officers who arrived at the scene described it as the most horrific attack on a defenseless woman they had ever encountered. The murder weapon was likely a heavy, blunt object used with extreme force to inflict severe injuries on Rachel. The attack was so vicious that Rachel's body showed no signs of attempting to defend herself, suggesting she was caught off guard from behind. While the crime scene resembled a robbery, investigators suspected a personal motive or intense hatred due to the brutality of the attack. However, it was unclear who could harbor such animosity towards a young, petite mother of 2. The investigation began with interviews of Rachel's family members and neighbors, who all claimed she had no enemies and was well-liked by everyone. None of the neighbors reported seeing anything suspicious on the day of the murder, including strange cars or individuals near the victim's house. Joe, Rachel's husband, stated he had spent most of the day at a bus depot on the other side of town for work and had a coworker who could confirm his alibi. The coworker corroborated Joe's statement, but the police couldn't shake off their lingering doubts. The scene resembled a robbery, yet nothing of significant value was missing. A sum of €1,000 lay untouched on the bedside table in plain sight, and another stash in the kitchen cupboard was also left undisturbed. In the dressing table, a jewelry box was found, but only a pair of chains and earrings were missing, discovered separately in a drawer. Joe reported that a digital camera, silverware, and one of his dumbbells, likely used as the murder weapon, were also missing. The whole situation seemed bizarre. The house was ransacked, the landlady brutally murdered, all for seemingly trivial items. When questioned by the police, Joe appeared distraught, crying, shaking, and feverish. However, one investigator later noted that Joe's state seemed more like nervous excitement than genuine grief or shock. Joe's behavior became even more suspicious when asked about the possibility of his wife having an affair. He firmly denied it, but then awkwardly added that he had never cheated on his wife, a statement that sounded unconvincing. 2 miles away from the crime scene, a bag was discovered in some bushes. The bag contained a camera, silverware, and a few pieces of jewelry that matched the items reported stolen by Joe. With this new evidence, the initial theory of a robbery gone wrong could be ruled out, and the case was reclassified as a premeditated murder. The widower, who had been trying to show grief and pain, came under suspicion because his emotions seemed insincere, making him the primary suspect. Joe had no evidence to present, so the detectives had to thoroughly investigate his alibi, the crime scene, and his relationship with his wife. Joe claimed that on the morning of the incident, he stopped by the gym, which was a regular part of his routine. Surveillance cameras in the parking lot and the gym confirmed his presence. He then went to the office and later visited a bus station in a remote area of the city to check on the placement of advertisements on vehicles. A colleague corroborated Joe's story, stating that they had spoken on the phone around that time. The investigators then seized Joe's computer from his workplace for further inspection. The emails on Joe's computer contained some suspicious correspondence, which he had partially deleted. However, specialists were able to recover the deleted messages, and the police became convinced they were on the right track. The emails revealed that Joe frequently communicated with his friend and sister, constantly complaining about his wife, Rachel. He used insults and profanity to describe her, stating that she no longer attracted him as a woman and that she caused him outright disgust. Moreover, the computer revealed a suspicious correspondence between Joe and his colleague, Nikki Pelly. It was evident from their communication that their relationship went beyond a friendship, and both of them should be questioned. Nikki Pelly worked at an advertising company and frequently interacted with Joe for work-related purposes. Despite being 10 years older than Joe, she and Joe were having an affair. The exact timeline of their workplace romance was unclear, but it was discovered that Joe spent evenings and nights at Nikki's place. Meanwhile, his wife, Rachel, was under the impression that Joe was busy with work. Joe's messages to Nikki revealed that he promised they would soon be together, along with his sons from his marriage to Rachel. These messages raised suspicions, as the children would likely live with Rachel in the event of a divorce. Initially, Joe denied having any extramarital affairs. However, when confronted with irrefutable evidence of his infidelity, he admitted to secretly dating Nikki for a period before allegedly breaking up. The O'Reilly house was cordoned off as a crime scene for over a week, and no one was allowed to enter while the police thoroughly examined and documented the premises. During this time, Joe lived with his sister at their grandparents' home. At the funeral, Joe's behavior was unexpected. Instead of appearing distraught, he seemed remarkably calm and composed, almost as if he was avoiding the coffin. When it was his turn to bid farewell, he did so briefly and without emotion. As he walked away, he casually remarked that the coffin could be closed and buried. After the family returned home, they found everything in the same state as it was on the day of the crime, except for the absence of the body. Joe asked his in-laws to accompany him, and they agreed, thinking he needed their support. However, upon arriving at the scene, Joe began to speculate about the killer's actions in a way that seemed unusual. He walked around the room where his wife had been murdered, describing the attack in vivid detail. He pointed out dried blood spatters and suggested that the perpetrator might have gone to the bathroom to wash off the blood and clean the crime weapon before taking it with him. Joe's account was disturbingly detailed, and he even used gestures to mimic the blows, which was unsettling to witness. However, his parents thought his behavior was a way to cope with stress and talk about his feelings. Meanwhile, Rose couldn't shake the feeling that her son-in-law was repeating a pattern of behavior and was responsible for their daughter's murder. Shortly after the funeral, Joe started seeking media attention, giving numerous interviews. He invited reporters to his home, giving them a tour of the crime scene and describing what happened. On camera, Joe would address the killer, urging them to surrender to the police. 3 weeks after the tragedy, the family agreed to participate in a TV program about the crime. While Rachel's parents were overcome with grief, Joe acted like a celebrity on set. He chatted with the makeup artists, asked about his on-camera appearance. The police, who still suspected Joe, and followed him and discovered he went to see his mistress, Nikki, after the TV show. By then, they were convinced he was the killer and focused on gathering evidence for the court. Gathering evidence was a lengthy, complicated, and painstaking process, mainly because the key piece of evidence, the instrument of the crime, was never found. However, other crucial evidence was collected. The first to testify were Nikki, Joe's mistress, and the colleague who had previously confirmed Joe's alibi. Both faced potential jail time for perjury and decided to come clean to avoid risking their freedom. Nikki revealed that she and Joe had never actually broken up, despite their earlier claims. In fact, their ongoing relationship had been discovered by Rachel, leading to a major argument between the spouses on the eve of the tragedy. The colleague, on the other hand, admitted that he wasn't entirely sure if Joe was at the bus station on the other side of the city at the time of his wife's murder. He had simply corroborated Joe's story as a favor, without realizing at the time that Joe was a suspect in the crime. Investigators also recovered incriminating correspondence from Joe's computer, including messages where he insulted his wife and made plans for a future with Nikki and their children. Furthermore, after reviewing numerous interviews with Joe and footage from a TV program, police concluded that he had described the crime in disturbing detail, suggesting that only the perpetrator could have known such specifics. Joe's careless comments helped investigators piece together the events of the crime. He began the day by intentionally making an appearance at the gym, ensuring he was captured on camera. Later, he informed his colleagues that he would be working in a different part of the city, and his phone might be out of range. However, instead of heading to the bus station as he claimed, he returned home and armed himself with a dumbbell. He lay in wait in the marital bedroom for his wife, who had taken their children to kindergarten. When she arrived, he launched a surprise attack from behind, leaving her no chance of escape. After the murder, Joe, who later confessed, washed the blood off himself and the dumbbell in the adjacent bathroom. Joe changed his clothes and scattered his belongings to make it look like a robbery. He then went to work, getting rid of the evidence along the way. In an attempt to create an alibi, he called his wife's cell phone, sent her messages, and left voicemails, pretending she was still alive. At work, he acted strangely, appeared overly excited, and had shaky hands. His colleagues noticed this and asked if he was okay, but he seemed confused and rushed to his office. Shortly after, the daycare center called to inform him that his daughter hadn't been picked up. Instead of rushing home, he sent his mother-in-law to the house, where she would be the first to discover her daughter's disfigured body. Joe thought he had covered his tracks and that his guilt would be impossible to prove. However, his desire for fame and public attention ultimately led to his downfall. Despite most of the evidence being circumstantial, Joe was arrested 2 years after committing the crime. The key to proving his guilt lay in reconstructing his movements on the day of the crime, using data from a cell phone that he always carried with him. Notably, at the time of Rachel's murder, Joe's cell phone signal was coming from the family home, which was later verified through phone records. Additionally, it was revealed during the trial that an anonymous letter to Child Protective Services, accusing Rachel of being an abusive mother, was written by Joe's mother at his request. Joe had been trying to discredit his wife, as he knew he would not be granted sole custody of their children in the event of a divorce. However, when social services investigated the claims made in the anonymous letter, they found no evidence to support them. Undeterred, Joe decided to take matters into his own hands. During the trial, he showed no remorse, chatting animatedly with his defense attorneys and even attempting to joke, convinced that he would be acquitted. But in the summer of 2007, the court found Joe guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The lawyers attempted to dispute the decision but were unsuccessful, with all their complaints and appeals being denied. Joe and Nikki's relationship continued even after he was imprisoned. She regularly visited him for many years, but they stopped communicating in 2022 for unknown reasons. Throughout his imprisonment, Joe O'Reilly maintained his innocence. He became a well-behaved inmate, avoiding any issues in the hopes of becoming eligible for parole in the future. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Savannah Greywind. Savannah Greywind was born on August 9, 1995, in Burke County, North Dakota. Savannah had 2 brothers, Joe and Casey, and a younger sister, Kayla. Her parents, Norberta and Joe, took great pride in their children. The family resided in Fargo, North Dakota, until Savannah was 9 years old, then relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation in 2005. Growing up on the Spirit Lake Reservation, a Native American community in eastern North Dakota, Savannah developed a deep appreciation for nature and animals, particularly horses. It was there that she met Ashton Matheny when she was 15 years old, and they have remained together ever since. When it was time for Savannah and Ashton to pursue higher education, the family moved back to Fargo. Savannah secured a job at a nursing home caring for the elderly, began studying to become a nurse, and was preparing to take her certification exam in September. At this point in her life, Savannah was a happy young woman expecting her first child. She and Ashton had found an apartment, paid a deposit, and planned to move into their own home in early September. Meanwhile, Savannah was living with her parents in a basement apartment of a 7-unit, 3-story building. Unbeknownst to her, Brooke Cruz, 38, and William Hone, 33, rented an apartment on the 3rd floor of the same building. Brooke Lynn Crew grew up in a neighborhood in Bradenton, Sarasota, Florida. Her parents divorced when she was young, leaving Brooke and her 6 siblings to live with their mother. According to her sister, the family had a relatively comfortable life. Brooke underwent significant changes during her teenage years, transforming from a caring girl to a troubled teen. She was shuffled between foster homes, losing contact with her siblings. Brooke was imprisoned in Missouri in 2002 for falsifying documents, then arrested again for parole violation in Texas. She married Carl Crew, a carpenter from Minnesota, at 27, had 2 more children, and worked as an administrative assistant. The marriage ended in divorce in 2009, with the father granted custody of the children. Brooke kept diaries throughout her life, recording tumultuous relationships and self-doubt. Brooke believed Carl had emotionally traumatized her through bullying and belittling. Despite this, she took steps to move forward, studying psychology and joining a dating site, where she met Andrew Murray, a chef from Australia. She relocated to Australia in late 2011. In January 2012, Brooke had an argument with her ex-husband over child custody. The situation escalated, and Brooke allegedly attacked him with a knife, leading to her arrest. She fled to Australia using false documents and married Andrew, but their 6-month marriage ended when he discovered her past. After returning to the US, Brooke was involved in a custody battle for her children. She then met William Hone, a 28-year-old convicted of child abuse, and fell in love with him despite his concerning past. Brooke began taking steps towards a fresh start, including finding a job in 2013. Brooke turned her hobby into a profession by studying psychology at Minnesota State University. She developed a particular interest in the psychology of serial killers and wrote a well-received paper. However, her personal life struggled due to a codependent relationship with William, marked by excessive drinking and substance abuse. Despite her outward success, Brooke's mental health deteriorated, leading to withdrawal, strained relationships at work, and a job change. Her obsession with dark human psychology exacerbated her emotional turmoil. The situation culminated on December 23, 2014, when Brooke lost custody of her children and was hospitalized for a panic attack, receiving a PTSD diagnosis. In 2015, Brooke wrote about feeling drained in her relationship with William Hahn. She felt he no longer made an effort to be intimate, and their moments together were brief and unsatisfying. As time passed, Brooke became withdrawn and isolated, exacerbated by a gallbladder disease diagnosis. The situation escalated in 2016 when William brutally beat her, pleaded guilty to assault, and was ordered to stay away. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where there were no longer any healthy moments. A major issue was that Brooke had become unable to have children following an abortion in 2011. Despite this, her partner William continually pressured her to have a child. In an attempt to keep him from leaving, Brooke lied about being pregnant in early 2017, even going so far as to email him a fake ultrasound picture and a photo of a positive pregnancy test. To further convince William, Brooke found a recording of a random baby's heartbeat online and presented it as the heartbeat of their unborn child. However, by August 2017, it became clear that Brooke was not pregnant. William, having already announced the pregnancy to those around him, was unwilling to admit the truth and instead demanded that Brooke produce a child. With her medical knowledge, Brooke began compiling a list of items needed to induce labor, driven by her desire to appease William's demands. On a Saturday afternoon in August, Brooke visited Savannah at her downstairs apartment and offered her $20 to model a dress Brooke was supposedly making. Savannah agreed and, before heading upstairs to Brooke's apartment, ordered a pizza, expecting to eat it when she returned home an hour later. She had to drive her younger brother to work later that day. However, Savannah failed to return on time. Her brother went to Brooke's apartment around 2:30 p.m. and heard the sound of a sewing machine, but no one answered the door. A few minutes later, Savannah's father, Joe, also visited Brooke's apartment and knocked on the door. Brooke shouted that they were still working on the dress and that Savannah was trying it on, which was why she couldn't answer the door. As Savannah's mother, Norberta, returned home, she drove her son to work herself. She found the pizza untouched and tried to contact Savannah by text, but received no response. Norberta then visited Brooke's apartment, looking for her daughter. She noticed that Savannah's shoes, purse, car keys, and belongings were still in the apartment. Given Savannah's pregnancy and related discomfort, it was unlikely she would go for a walk. Norberta called Ashton, hoping he might have picked up Savannah, but he said he hadn't heard from her either. Later that day, the police searched Brooke and William's apartment, as it was Savannah's last known location. The landlord allowed them in and did not obstruct their search. However, since they didn't have a warrant, the police did not search closets or behind closed doors. The police department explained to the family that Savannah was an adult and capable of making her own decisions without informing her family. With no evidence of a crime having occurred in or near the home, investigators concluded that Savannah had left voluntarily. The family was upset by the police department's indifferent attitude towards the case. The police conducted 2 more searches of the apartment but found nothing. However, William would later admit that during one of the searches, he hid the baby in a suitcase and Savannah's body in a dresser with the shelves removed. 2 days after the murder, they disposed of the dresser containing Savannah's body by dumping it into the river from a bridge. On August 23, 2017, William's co-workers informed the police that he had mentioned having a baby at home. That same day, neighbors of the apartment building reported hearing a baby crying from apartment number 5 and immediately contacted the police. With this new information, the officers obtained a warrant and returned to the apartment for a more thorough search, during which they found a live newborn baby girl. Brooke revealed that Savannah herself had secretly given her the baby just 2 days after Savannah's disappearance. According to Brooke, Savannah had previously expressed that she did not want the baby. In fact, Savannah had visited Brooke earlier to ask how she could induce labor on her own. Then, in the early hours of the morning 2 days later, Savannah showed up at Brooke's doorstep with the baby and handed him over. Savannah was reported missing, and the baby was taken into temporary custody by Cass County Social Services. A DNA test later confirmed the baby's parentage, and he was reunited with his father for a short period. 8 days after her disappearance, a fisherman discovered a body wrapped in plastic on the Red River near Harwood. The body was identified as Savannah's through a tattoo on her leg that read, "Too beautiful for Earth." Subsequently, Brooke, Crew, and William were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and providing false information to the police. They eventually began to confess to their crimes. Brooke initiated a physical altercation with Savannah, who was pregnant, by accusing her of stealing and mistreating her cat. The confrontation escalated into a physical scuffle, during which Brooke pushed Savannah, causing her to hit her head on the bathroom sink and lose consciousness. Brooke then used a knife to make a cut from hip to hip, intentionally harming Savannah and her unborn baby. Savannah repeatedly lost and regained consciousness while Brooke did this. When questioned, Brooke admitted that William was not aware of the impending plan. According to Brooke, William came home, entered the bathroom, and saw Savannah's injured body. He asked if Savannah was alive, and Brooke replied that she didn't know. William then left the bathroom briefly and returned with a rope, which he used to strangle Savannah, ensuring her death. After the murder, Brooke and William cleaned the bathroom, scrubbing the floor and walls, and hid Savannah's body in a bathroom closet. When police officers arrived at the door, Brooke attempted to remain calm and composed. The officers searched the apartment but, lacking a search warrant, were unable to thoroughly inspect the premises, including closets and dressers. As a result, they did not find Savannah's body. The perpetrator stated that the child was lying under a blanket on their bed, next to William, during the searches that day. The child was calm and didn't cry, which is why they weren't discovered. However, by the third inspection on August 20th, the body had been moved and hidden in a dresser. Meanwhile, the infant was concealed in a suitcase. On the early morning of August 21st, the dresser was carried down the stairs, loaded into a Jeep Cherokee, and driven to a river, where it was disposed of. William denied participating in the crime but admitted to hiding the newborn baby girl and providing false information to law enforcement to cover up the crime. Brooke and William were set a $2 million bail, which William found unreasonable and unrealistic. Brooke Crew received a life sentence without parole. During the trial, William's involvement in the crime was not proven. However, Brooke's cellmate, Jennifer Robinson, testified against Brooke. According to Jennifer, Brooke claimed to have strangled Savannah with a rope after learning about Savannah's affair with William and suspecting that Savannah's child might be William's. On September 28, 2018, a jury acquitted William of conspiracy to commit murder. Nevertheless, on October 30, 2018, William was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, having pleaded guilty to the charge. The following spring, in May 2019, William appealed to the Supreme Court. After a sentencing review trial on October 7, 2019, Judge Olin stated that despite the Supreme Court's dissent, he would still impose the harshest possible sentence, which was 20 years in prison. Considering that William had already spent 775 days behind bars, he will have to serve more than 7 additional years of his 20-year sentence. Norberta believes her daughter Savannah's disappearance wasn't taken seriously because she's Native American. This sparked Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp to introduce Savannah's Law, signed in October 2020, to address violence against Native American women by improving collaboration between authorities. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Wang Nan. Wang Nan was born in 1987 in Guangzhou, China, a major city and former capital. She came from a relatively affluent family, and her parents provided her with the best possible education, fostering her talents and potential. Wang Nan excelled academically, particularly in the sciences. After completing her secondary education, she enrolled in a prestigious university, studying business and finance fundamentals while mastering multiple foreign languages. Upon graduation, she landed a job at a large travel agency, where she established herself as a valuable, responsible, and highly motivated employee. Her career progressed rapidly, and she was soon assigned to Thailand to lead and develop a new branch. Wang Nan was a high-achieving manager at a travel agency, but she left to pursue her own business venture. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Bangkok, which quickly grew into a popular chain under her leadership. As a successful entrepreneur, Wang effectively managed and expanded her business. However, her professional success came at the cost of her personal life. Her last romantic relationship was during her university days, and once she started working, she had no time for dating due to her demanding schedule. Wang, nearing her 30th birthday, wasn't worried about her solitary life, consumed by her business. To improve her Thai skills, she enrolled in courses at a training center. There, she met Yu, who caught her attention by staring before approaching her in Thai. They briefly conversed, and Yu asked why she was studying Thai. Wang replied it was essential for her business growth. Yu proposed that they exchange business cards so they could arrange to meet again. As a courtesy, Wang gave him her card, and he gave her his in return. According to his card, Yu was involved in the export-import trade in Bangkok, but this information didn't make a significant impression on Wang, who simply put the card in her purse and forgot about it. In contrast, Yu seemed truly interested and followed up by calling Wang the very next day. However, she was too preoccupied with work at that time and politely turned down his invitation to meet for coffee. A few days later, the situation recurred. Wang declined another date, citing her busy schedule and preparations for a business conference where she aimed to expand her professional network. However, Yu appeared at the event, bearing a lavish bouquet of flowers. He waited for Wang to become available, then approached her and asked her out again. Wang was won over by Yu's persistence, as no one had ever pursued her so fervently. She agreed to dinner, marking the beginning of an unexpected romance. Yu fell deeply in love with Wang, showering her with attention, surprises, and gifts. He sent flowers and sweet notes every morning and called her twice a day. Wang's feelings were mixed, irritated by his intensity but flattered by his efforts. She found herself in a romantic relationship again, swept up by his wooing. Wang Nan was thrilled to discover that Yu shared her passions and hobbies. To win her heart, Yu made an effort to learn how to cook her favorite meals and surprised her with tickets to thrilling events. Not only was Yu charming, but he was also very supportive, always willing to lend a hand whenever Wang Nan needed it, whether at work or at home. Wang Nan felt like she was on cloud 9, but one thing bothered her. After just a few months of dating, Yu was already talking about getting married and even suggesting names for their future kids. Wang Man was taken aback by Yu's eagerness, but he justified it by pointing out that they were both in their 30s and it was time to start a family. Wang Man was unsure how to respond, feeling uncertain about Yu's suitability as a life partner. After a heart-to-heart conversation, where Wang Nan expressed her doubts, Yu vowed to prove his love. That night, he sent her a heartfelt letter, reaffirming his commitment to being a devoted husband and father. In the morning, Wang found Yu waiting on her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers. He proclaimed his serious intentions and readiness to marry her immediately. Wang Man joked that the courthouse wouldn't be open for another hour and a half. However, Yu suggested going there right away, and if it was open, they would register their marriage on the spot. Wang agreed, confident that the courthouse would be closed. But to her surprise, they found it open, and the officer was already at his desk, ready to register their marriage registration. It was revealed that Yu had made prior arrangements, requesting a special exception to formalize their marriage early in the morning. The wedding was unusual, with no guests, rings, wedding dress, or photos. Wang couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't real, especially since she hadn't introduced Yu to her mother, with whom she was very close. Before she knew it, she was holding a marriage certificate. Wang and Yu had a troubled family life. Wang regretted her marriage almost immediately after it was registered. Initially, she had hoped that Yu would be a good husband and a reliable partner. However, her hopes were soon dashed as Yu revealed his true nature. He spent most of his time at home playing video games, using his wife's money, and contributing nothing to the household income. When Wang asked him why he didn't work, Yu claimed that his business was experiencing a seasonal downturn and that he could take a break. However, this downturn had been ongoing for an extended period, prompting Wang to investigate her husband's business. She discovered that his supposed export-import business was merely a facade, existing only on paper and business cards. At that moment, Wang realized the gravity of her mistake in not creating a prenuptial agreement. This meant her husband, Yu, had the freedom to spend her earnings as he pleased and could claim her property in the event of a divorce. They had a heart-to-heart conversation, during which Yu broke down in tears, promising to turn his life around and find employment. However, it soon became apparent that he had no intention of looking for a job and was content to rely on his wife's financial support. Yu, a grown man, regularly behaved immaturely, devoting most of his time to playing computer games. On the rare occasions when he helped with household chores or assisted his wife at their restaurant, he would request money from her for personal expenses. Wang eventually reached her limit and informed Yu she wouldn't give him any more money until he secured employment. The next day, following this conversation, Yu vanished, taking their marriage certificate and Wang's identity card with him. It wasn't until the evening, when Wang received a call from her accountant inquiring about a large sum of money transferred from her account, that she realized the item were missing. She was shocked, as she hadn't authorized any transfers, but she immediately suspected Yu. The transferred amount exceeded $500,000, which Yu had moved into his personal account by providing the bank with their marriage certificate, Wang's documents, and a claim that the money was jointly managed. Wang immediately reported the theft to the police, and her husband, Yu, was tracked down a few hours later when he tried to withdraw some of the stolen funds. Yu broke down in tears and begged for his wife's forgiveness, revealing that he had accumulated a large debt due to his gambling addiction and was being threatened. It was also revealed that Yu had a previous run-in with the law, having served an 8-year prison sentence for robbery in China. Wang was both shocked and ashamed, realizing she was not as familiar with her husband as she had thought. Despite this, she viewed gambling as an illness and felt driven to support her husband in overcoming his addiction and resuming a normal life. Wang not only agreed to pay off half of Yu's debt but also offered him a job as a manager at one of her restaurants. Initially, You seemed grateful and took his new role seriously, even devising a successful strategy for the restaurant's development. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived, and he soon began spending more time playing computer games and engaging in other leisure activities. During that time, Wang found out she was pregnant and told her husband, Yu. However, he reacted strangely and aggressively, saying he wasn't ready for a child and wanted her to have an abortion. Wang refused, and Yu threatened to divorce her and divide their property through the court. He didn't speak to her for several days but then apologized and changed his behavior. Yu explained that he had said hurtful things in the heat of the moment but was actually happy about the pregnancy. He started showing care and helping out around the house again. 2 months later, Wang was happy because her marriage had improved, and Yu was being attentive and responsible. He was preparing their home for the arrival of the baby and doing his job as a manager. One day, Yu suggested getting life and health insurance for Wang because of her pregnancy, to protect her and the baby in case of unexpected events. Wang agreed and wondered why she hadn't thought of it earlier. They got the insurance the next day, and a couple of weeks later, Yu suggested taking a vacation to relax and unwind. Wang was initially hesitant about taking a trip, but her husband persuaded her by pointing out that they had never had a honeymoon and would soon be too busy with their baby to travel. He also emphasized that they needed a break to clear their minds after a tough period. Eventually, Wang agreed to the trip. Her husband took charge of planning the trip, choosing the destination, booking the hotel, and organizing activities to ensure a balance of excitement, education, and relaxation, given Wang's pregnancy. Wang was happy to let him handle everything and was pleased to see how enthusiastic he was about their vacation. On June 7th, they arrived at the park and spent the day exploring, taking in the beautiful views and sights. As it was a summer Friday evening, the park was crowded with visitors. As the evening wore on, Wang noticed that her husband was becoming increasingly agitated and nervous. When she asked if everything was okay, he replied that the large crowds of tourists were ruining their chances of a peaceful and private sunset viewing. Wang Nan eventually agreed that it would be romantic to watch the sunset, as the park would become less crowded as the sun dipped below the horizon. Yu climbed over the fence of the observation deck and called out to his wife, telling her about the breathtaking view. However, Wang refused to join him, citing the darkness and potential danger. Yu became angry but returned to her after a few minutes. He suggested that they should come back to the park to watch the sunrise instead. Since they returned to their hotel well past midnight, they decided to sleep in on Saturday and head back to the reserve early on Sunday morning. On Sunday, June 9th, a couple, Yu and Wang, visited the national park to watch the sunrise. They woke up at 3 a.m. and arrived at the park while it was still dark, finding the area mostly deserted. From an observation deck, they admired the dawn. Afterwards, Yu went down to a cliff and encouraged Wang to join him to see the rock paintings. Wang was hesitant, but Yu assured her it was safe and promised to help her down and then climb back up. She trusted him and cautiously approached the cliff. The view was breathtaking. Yu hugged Wang and asked if she had any regrets in life. She replied confidently that she didn't. Yu then ran his hand through her hair, kissed her cheek, and leaned in to whisper, "Die." He loosened his grip and pushed Wang down the cliff. He checked to ensure no one was watching, looked down but couldn't see where she had fallen. There was only silence, indicating no one had seen or heard anything. Yu walked calmly towards the park exit, intending to report the incident only after Wang was surely dead. However, a few hikers who had wandered off the trail spotted Wang's body on the rocks and quickly called for rescue. As Yu left the reserve, several emergency vehicles with flashing lights and sirens sped past him. Realizing what was happening, he returned to the scene where his wife had fallen. Upon his return, Yu put on a dramatic display of grief, crying and screaming for help. Convinced that Wang was already dead, he thought no one would uncover the truth. But, as it turned out, Wang's fall was cushioned by tree branches, bushes, and rocks, which slowed her descent and saved her life, as well as the life of her unborn child. Though she suffered serious injuries, Wang suddenly opened her eyes and attempted to speak. Her husband's initial horror was evident to everyone present, but he quickly regained composure, leaned in close to Wang, and whispered in Chinese that she should remain silent if she wanted to live. Wang suffered severe injuries, including head trauma, multiple fractures, internal organ damage, and significant blood loss. Her spine was also badly damaged, leading doctors to worry that she might never walk again. She spent several days in a coma, during which her husband, Yu, stayed by her side. However, whenever he was alone with her, he thought about how to end her life without arousing suspicion. When Wang regained consciousness, Yu was extremely nervous, fearing she would reveal the truth to the police. He refused to leave her alone, even for a moment. Whenever he had the opportunity, he threatened her, claiming he had nothing to lose. Initially, Wang corroborated Yu's account, attributing her fall to dizziness. However, when Yu briefly left her side, Wang asked a nurse to call the police and prevent Yu from re-entering the room. It was then that she revealed the shocking truth, alleging that her husband had attempted to kill her. Yu burst into the room, claiming his wife was insane due to a head injury and that he would never hurt her or the baby. However, his words lacked conviction, and he was taken into custody at the hospital that same day. He faced multiple charges, including attempted murder and intimidation, for trying to silence his wife. Initially, Wang had hoped to save her pregnancy, as the baby had survived the fall. However, the doctors advised an abortion due to the strong painkillers, multiple surgeries under general anesthesia, and the need for antibiotics. They prioritized Wang's life, as the fetus would likely not survive the effects of the medication. This news was devastating for Wang, but she followed the doctor's advice. Yu consistently denied his guilt and maintained that the event was an accident. In prison, he remained calm and hired skilled lawyers, confident that he could avoid or minimize punishment. Investigators and the prosecutor were convinced that he committed the crime out of self-interest, seeking a substantial insurance payout and his wife's significant fortune of nearly $2.5 million. However, during one interrogation, Yu stunned everyone by revealing another motive for his heinous act. He harbored resentment towards his wife, Wang, for agreeing to only pay off half of his debt, which he accumulated due to his gambling addiction. Yu believed that if his wife truly loved him, she would have covered all of his debts, given her financial means. He concluded that Wang did not love him and felt justified in punishing her. In March 2021, Yu was convicted and received a life sentence. However, Song and his lawyers submitted multiple appeals. 6 months later, the Thai court reduced the sentence to 33 years in prison, showing unusual leniency. Wang and her loved ones were shocked, arguing that such a light sentence would set a bad precedent and potentially encourage others to commit similar horrific crimes. In Yu's case, his relatives claimed that he was a wealthy businessman and that Wang married him for selfish reasons. However, this claim cannot be proven as Yu has nothing but huge debts. As for Wang, despite the doctor's predictions, she was able to recover after undergoing a series of complicated surgeries and a long rehabilitation process. She learned to walk again and spent most of her earnings on her recovery. In 2023, Wang returned to work and was able to revive her once successful business. She also founded an organization dedicated to helping women who are victims of domestic violence and runs her own blog, where she shares her experiences and warns women against making the same mistakes she did.